later on. Because you have so much more real estate to work with at the beginning, it's just a freer rotation. It's a lot more simple for the teams that are wanting to go earlier because they can do that. Of course, that was the old zones, but let's take a little look at what the new zones hold for us as well. How much more difficult is it when you are presented with a very, very difficult rotate into that 6th zone? We can see, of course, here is the 5th zone. There it is on the screen right now. We can see there are some teams in the middle. This is a difficult 5th zone as well, Vivid, because it's kind of in the center. There's not really a dead side.
Yeah, a lot of teams are spread out, right? But when this 6th zone reveals itself, it's going to be another one of those drastic pools, right? Pulling all the way up to the north. So you would kind of expect that all these teams that are to the south are going to have to come up to the north, and you're going to have a congested side on the south side. And that happens, but it happens like tenfold because of this new zone. There's not a lot of space that these teams can kind of early rotate in, and pay attention to the south side of that zone right there. Pretty much every single team outside of like 4 is on that edge.
And because that zone has to move a lot quicker as well, the Storm does move a little bit quicker. So all of those teams that are a little bit later on have to get their rotates done early. If they don't do it early, they could be in trouble.
So many of these duos, right? They're trying to find that line. How do we adapt? Fortnite always and forever will be about adapting to situations, right? And I think for some duos, they're still trying to figure out what these zones kind of look like for them and their respective duo. Now, of course, it's not just us talking about all things Fortnite. We have some casters standing by. Let me introduce 11-2K and Jacob PR.
I miss these guys.
There they are.
Good to be back.
Listen, are you going to put some ribbon on me?
No, I've got nothing for you, Big. I've got nothing for you. This was actually a group effort. We all chipped in to be able to purchase this week.
Well, I'm glad your valuable V-Bucks went somewhere. Let's talk about week 2, major number 2. We're coming in, like we kind of touched on, some of these duels are still trying to adapt to circles 6 and 7. How do you guys feel about that coming into the competition?
Yeah, it's a new change, right? I think a lot of people sort of, expecting some sort of change at some point with some of the zones. And I think it's one that the players are struggling to adapt to, right? I think when you have such sort of strenuous zones as you guys sort of broke down, right, where all these teams are so congested together, there's not really much room to breathe. You have to find a way to sort of deal with that if you're playing this lobby.
Yeah, and I think these zone changes are just simply put unforgiving for some of these teams that are not able to adapt on the fly. You talked about the lack of mobility that some of these teams are going to have to face through some of these games. You better have some sort of trick underneath your sleeve. Otherwise, you might end up with 0 points in that game.
Trick up the sleeve is going to be materials. Make sure you manage your materials very, very wisely, because some of those far pulling zones, they're going to be tough hurdle if you don't have mobility or materials.
I'm thinking of teams that didn't make it into last week's finals as well. How are they going to cope today? It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Man, well, guess what? We've got 6 incredible games lined up for us here in Europe. So why wait? Let's just get into it, right? There's games to be had. There's caches to be opened. Kinetic blades to shing shing. Let's get into all of the action right here, right now. This is the FNCS.
We are here in week number 2 of EU. Week number 1 was a pizza party, Jacob, and I'm sure many of the new players competing in this lobby will be looking to get in on that action. Of course, we have 6 games now ready for you, where all of these players need to do really, really well if they want a spot in Surgery and even a grand final.
Yep, and that wait is no longer here because the battle bus is rared up and ready to go for game number 1. And you mentioned some of those teams that may not have made the finals in week number 1. For those teams that did make the finals in week 1, we have 15 returning teams. This is their chance. With a top placement here, they could book their ticket directly to the FNCS Major 2 finals.
It's the time to make it count, especially considering about 21 of the duos in this lobby did not even qualify through round 1 of the qualifiers last week. A large amount of turnover today. And that just makes the competition even more strenuous. You have to make this lobby count, because otherwise you just won't have enough series points to be able to get through to the next stage of the competition.
Which is so important. You find yourself in Surge Week, if that's not the case, really fighting for your tournament live, and already right out of the gates, you got Malibuka going down. Thomas, and a huge exchange. He actually gets knocked. It's Patrick. He's going to be there. Malibuka just had a sliver of HP. I thought he got knocked, but 1 HP is better than none.
Patrick takes down Thomas, and Malibuka was able to get out of dodge. And so there will be hopes of some sort of reboot. It looks like Malibuka's coming right back, though. Yeah, he looks to run in. He has just the 1 HP. What's he thinking? Has a big pop, but he's not going to have the time to use it. As long as Patrick is still alive and kicking. You can see now building up, no materials left, but he has the weaponry to take him down. Malibuka and Thomas are no more. It's Toos and Patrick who come out on top here.
Surprise! I know that's not the one Zeke was hoping for on his birthday, but we get a surprise nonetheless. Something we didn't really expect to see. And Malabuka, 1 HP, returning back. Probably thought the player was more weak than he actually was. His gold is down. Anchor's trying to go ahead and get that res as well.
Yeah, no, Malabuka and Thomas, they spent a lot of the season deciding on a drop spot. It was only right before the finals they landed on Racetrack and decided that would be the spot of choice. And having problems here, getting out dropped. Racetrack, a very difficult spot to contest. Your drops have to be on point, and they aren't quite able to do it in this game, but plenty more opportunities for them.
Yeah, you're seeing very, very early on, a lot of these players, once they get that early damage, even if they do go down, their teammates have that trust. They're trying to return back, not let a lot of that damage go to waste, so that way they can, in theory, pick up the eliminations, get the siphon, match everything that they fight for until that point. To jump on board our FNCS Invitational Champions, and this is one of the teams we were kind of prefacing and talking about.
Yeah, these guys didn't make it past the qualifiers last time, right? They couldn't make it out of round 1 last week, which is insane for a duo who has shown so much pedigree in competitive Fortnite history. But they are here now, and it is make or break for their season. They have to have a good result today. The series points are too valuable. Queasy and Veno, obviously, the duo that is very much associated with them because of that historic moment at the Invitational. They did qualify last week, and they did incredibly well, and they'll look to do so again here. In my opinion, the favorites to win the whole competition this season. They've looked like the best team over the course of it thus far.
Hey, we talk about looking good throughout the course of this season. Mr. Savage and Vidil, last week they finished at the top of our leaderboards. This week, though, a little bit of a change-up of story. I think they qualified in about 48th place, like a 3- or 4-way tie with 218 points through round 2. But there's one thing that I've learned throughout my history here in Fortnite is whether you finish 1st or 50th throughout round number 2, it's all about making it here to the finals, to where you have that set lobby. And you know as well as I do, once you have all the top players in one lobby, it kind of changes the way certain things play out.
DKS and Bad Sniper here in a battle at Shattered Slabs. We see many of these battles here at this POI, Jacob. Of course, there is a vote here, and so many of the players want to fight for that loot.
This is a battle that I'm not sure they're expecting to have this early in the game. Against Queasy and Vino on the left side, on the right, Sinet and Razumi. They're trying to be a little bit more proactive. They're trying to end this one a little bit quicker, but both of their respective teammates are not actually in this fight. But it goes to show that Sinet and Razumi, they're going to be the first ones to try to react. They're going to disengage out, realizing their position here on the map so far, and so they're trying to play that long game, play for safety. You add in the fact they are very, very low on mats. This is a fight that I 100% agree with disengaging in.
Yeah, you can see just looking to try to farm up the rock. Unfortunately, it's not going to give him much right now with the state of that, but it'll be just enough to allow him some extra protection as he groups up with Arizumi.
This is like the stage in the game where it's still rather early. Everybody doesn't want to throw it away now.
Yeah, and you can see just here south of Kinjutsu, Vino and Queasy again in this battle. And these are the kind of fights they like to take, right? Early on, a very isolated fight. They know there's not going to be many players in this general area to third-party this. And when you've got the best fighter in all of Fortnite on your team, they're always going to be confident to win these kind of fights. Vino is so prominent in these battles. And look at this play from Queasy. I'm bigging up Vino, but Queasy making the plays happen. A nice movement there with the kinetic blade and then catching his opponent off guard. Big damage being dealt.
Oh,
and he knows he used that toilet just to get out, but Queasy will be waiting and not quite all the shots for the final one.
Wow.
Brilliantly done. And on the other side, Vino actually cleaned up the other, so that's a clean sweep for this duo.
2 different fights playing out 2 different ways, and both of them being victorious. That's the trust they have in one another, though, because Queasy could have easily turned around, tried to help out Veno, finish that fight quicker, and then take another 2v1. But they have so much trust, and they realize the situation. 2 players with no HP, easy cleanup.
Yeah, brilliantly done from that duo. And of course, the zone pool is very favorable to them. They can stay in that Kinjutsu area for a while and continue to rack up surge damage. Putrick and Tus's solution to racking up surge damage will be to base up here. We see this base be built by practically every team that lands at that racetrack area, so nothing too surprising there. It's just going to be whether Putrick can actually connect and hit the shots that are presented to him. Ooh, what do we have here?
Uh-oh. Nico's one of those players who's able to sneak up on somebody. He's just farming. Photoside doesn't see him coming, but at the last second, almost like he got some sort of comms or maybe heard him sprinting, but he's by himself. He's separated only for a few seconds, though, as Kylie closes the distance along with his own kinetic blade, as they are able to at least hold on to some resemblance of the high ground, as now they're trying to go for the piece control, which is so important, but the third party's coming in, shots slowly but surely raining in from the north.
Yeah, part of me wonders if maybe, just maybe, Vika was too patient in his attempt to line up the perfect shot. I think he just got spotted by Putterside just at the sort of last moment with the way he sort of moved and turned. But it's interesting, right? Because these guys don't have to worry about being contested at the south side of Slappy. And so they are just going to look to take fights up here against the north team in Putterside in an attempt to sort of rack up storm surge damage, make sure they are above that threshold.
And interesting, you see them getting a little more confident, kind of converging on that north side Slappy team, because typically in a different style of lobby, that would be Tayson, that'd be Mustache. Things would play out just a little bit different. So you can see the effects of so many new teams interchanging in and out of a lot of these lobbies, as Nyrox is finally going to make his appearance. Shadows along with him. Not too many heals or mobility on them, though.
Yeah, and honestly, the first thing I think when I see Nyrox here is props to Nyrox, right? This is an OG in the scene. Of course, way back in the day, winning the World Cup duo competition alongside Aqua. And it's not been very often nowadays that we see him in weekly finals like this one in FNCS. So good to see him back on the grind, back doing well in these kind of competitions.
It's almost like a loot llama. You don't expect them, you don't see them very often in a lot of these games, but when you do finally get a glimpse, it's great things to be had as PKR and Link. They're trying to have a great rotation, but almost perfect accuracy coming out of their opponent, just taking him down, stopping the rotation in his tracks. As you can see in the mini-map, they're close to the distance in the blink of an eye. They got that first elimination. Now they're trying to clean up the second, get all that loot, and get one step closer to the end of this game.
Yeah, it's very rare that you completely count a player out of a situation, but with Vox and Kaizen hitting shots like they're hitting, I'd say very well clear of them. And this is what they were desperate to make sure they reached first, that combat cache here and the loot that comes with it. They already have good loot. You can see the mythic shotgun in inventory, but the extra materials will be nice to have, as well as any extra shields.
Wow.
Yeah, there.
I thought this replay was going to show Humble getting taken down the way that one started, but whether he has a red eye or a twin mag SMG, you can see is accurate practicing it, making sure they can pick up those eliminations. That's why you see them with one so far. 2 points. Nobody really getting placement points. That top 25 is when they begin to set in as Curb, another one of our returning teams here to this one, along with Default. They're fighting from the low ground against Putrick and Twos, who's already off to a hot start on the day. They got Surge, they got loot, but they got themselves in a weird spot here, stuck between two different teams on either side. And now you can kind of see why, though. You can kind of see why. That weapons cache that they were fighting for, all that loot, we saw other teams kind of just trying to top themselves off and just make sure they have the best loot in the lobby. Them, for Putrick and Twos, they need this loot in order to stay alive, and now they're fighting for it. Plenty of opportunity here to make this one come true. Yeah,
and of course they've got to be careful. The duo they're fighting came into this competition in fine form. Curb and Default, first place in round 2.
Big.
And here in round 3, they hope they can replicate that. It's very rare we see the first place team in round 2 win round 3 as well.
I don't want to call it too early, but hey, good little escape for now. Realizing, hey, we don't have a ton of splashes. All we have is those legendary slurp juices, so you got to try to conserve as much of that white HP as possible. Set yourself up for the end of this game as Hyjo and Bastrokey got themselves a tower not only in the sky, but on the side of a mountain outside of Mega City. And the zone continues to pull a little bit more north, which means they're going to have so many opportunities to try to get some tags on some rotating teams.
Yeah, and look, looking at the map there, you don't have to be a genius to know a lot of those teams are all the way on the outskirts there, just fighting for caches, looking to get those caches and loot up as best as possible. And of course, Rift Island will spawn at some point soon, and so you also got to be ready for that. Hydro in for Strokey. Here in this mega city area, based up on a very strong hill. One of the problems they'll have, though, in this game is that there's not actually as many players rotating in around this area. So they'll definitely have to hit their shots with Surge, and there it is, as I was saying, Rift Island spawning soon, and it is now there. Who will claim it becomes the question, Jacob, because everybody wants those pulse rifles.
Yeah, that's the question I'm always at least scratching my head, wondering who's going to be brave enough. Because, yeah, if you're able to kind of claim the top of that, you get the overclock pulse rifles, which you talk about, you get some extra heals, but you got to imagine how many other teams are confident to go for it. And that's a battle you don't necessarily want to be a part of. It's Anchor and Gold, just getting a few shots into the distance, just trying to help their Storm Surge. Link and PKR, the struggles still continue, but they were at least able to take down one player on their journey to claim this Rift Island. There's still another team directly there near them, and there's a couple of teams towards the outskirts, and they have that option with Rift down below to be that third party.
Yeah, and you can see now just box fight breaks out. Coop on the other side of things. You can see there, interested in the loot as well. That big pot will do wonders for Link's HP.
Coop on the other side. For him, it's all about just survival. Maybe try to get that reboot card. Get your teammate back. On Rift Island, there is a reboot ban here as well. Nice cone coming out from Coop. Defensive end. Stopping him in his tracks, but he takes a huge shot and it through. Coop is just making wonderful plays right before our very eyes. Able to get the first of 2 eliminations, but he knows battle and his job is not done just yet. He's getting shoved deeper into the storm, but he's on the slower side, so he has about 50 seconds before it fully closes.
It's very rare you see a player get completely pieced up, by the way, and still come out on top. I didn't think it was possible for Coop. I saw the pre-piece come through and it was like, okay, it's going to be wraps, but no, hits the big shot and rightfully comes out on top of that engagement. Look at this, PKR thought he had it all finished, wrapped up, sealed in a box, and no.
When the box becomes the boxer, I don't even know what to call that right now, but Coop, that one's definitely going in his highlight reel after this one. If he can kind of finish this one off, have a great day. Still has to go through Link, though. Honestly, the winner of this gets so much because you get an opportunity to get your teammate back into the game on top of that Rift Island where no team should try to contest it. If they do hear that reboot going off, you're going to be able to get all that loot as well as Link just continuing trying to bulldoze his way into the box. He has that overclock pulse rifles. So the blink of an eye, he can do so much damage. He gets in. The cone is there as well, but he goes down. Coop with a huge play to save the day.
Again. Another situation where you look at Coop and you think you just really shouldn't be in a position to win this fight, but he just connects with the big shot, and sometimes that's all it comes down to, Jacob. You might not be in the best position, but if you have the better aim and you can hit the bigger shot, you will come out on top.
Headshots only for Coop, 185. That was just a huge effort, and honestly, that's got to be oozing confidence and momentum from you and your teammates, because even though he is going to take some damage to the storm, he's going to get his reboot back up, and his teammate and him are going to have all that loot to claim as their own.
Look at Queasy and Vino, based up high here. The loot is looking magnificent for later down the line when you want to play a heal off. The chug splashes, the slurps. And if they have game time augment, things will be looking good. But look, before we get to Helos, I'm getting too ahead of myself. We have to wind down and take a look at what some of the other players in the lobby are doing. Of course, other people will be stacking up their heals as well. It's not just going to be Queasy doing that. It will be some of the others around. But to give us a brief update on what is going on around the lobby, we have none other than the best tackle to fill us in.
Of course, there's a lot of action taking place everywhere on the map, but as far as Bad Sniper and DKS are concerned, it's the vault and shattered slabs that's going to be their priority point. Plenty of loot, ample resources, and gives them more than enough time to take their time even before actually pushing through for these zone rotations. You can see Bad Sniper and DKS even managing to collect some nice Storm Surge tags in the process, and now they're ready to get it moving.
Shout out to Taco. Making sure we have eyes on every single team, every single plan and trick underneath these player sleeves. Will that work out for them? Well, only time will tell, and that is the beauty of Fortnite. So many different chaotic moments here in this match. It's all about consistency and survival throughout the next 6 games. Mr. Savage and Vidil, even though they don't have an elimination so far, they're 264 above the threshold with very little to worry about.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this team's trajectory. Of course, a bit of a hiccup yesterday in round 2, a bit of complacency on their side.
A little bit.
Just a tad bit. I'm sure they would own up to it as well after speaking to them on it. But the big thing for that duo is if they can continue to play how they did last week, they will be a solid contender for the championship come finals time.
Talking about a solid contender. First place in last week. Shimoki looking like he's doing that as a solo. Teammate probably going down long ago. They were one of the teams kind of tie history. 3 different VRs on the day last week. Tying greatness right in his tracks. All he needed was 1 more to break that record. Fakey and Fremont, 300 above the damage threshold. You can see the position they've solidified here, just outside of zone, but kind of gatekeeping a lot of those teams that have to rotate from Mega City.
Yeah, and sitting in the bushes. No strategy that we aren't too familiar with. This is something we're not too familiar with. Seti and Cammy, not up as a duo. It is just Seti alive. And as great as players they are, always going to be stronger together. That's not the case in this game. And the problem is, as good as the loot Seti has is, running low on builds, and he doesn't want to use his chug splashes, right? Because he is thinking about heal off down the line. I think the big thing for him, though, is that at this point, maybe it would be better to just use them and give himself a better chance, a better shot of staying alive in this game, over prioritizing them for heal off.
I like that. You know, in his head, he's used them too early. I can't win heal off. Well, you don't make it to that stage in the game, they're pointless either way. So he definitely has some decisions to be made along with DKS and Bad Sniper. We saw the setup for them to get into this position, but you can see that they're missing something rather important when it comes to this game, when it comes to their position, and that's any bit of white heals, from chug splashes, med kits, med mist. There's so many different variants, and they have none of them.
Yeah, and I think one of the only saving graces for them in this situation is that we get to take a look at that new 7th zone. Obviously, this new 6th zone was just before this as well, and they're positioned in it, so they haven't got to move. They can just wait and watch as players start to make their way on in. In the case of Nisha and Tina, they are one of those teams that have to make their way on in. And there are a lot of players in between them and that zone. Fortunately, though, they have the katanas, purple ones at that, so they have that 1 extra charge. And they will start to make their move now.
Just like a rotations past, different versions of Fortnite, it's going to be timing and the necessary execution of it to really bypass a lot of the chaos. But with a lot of teams already in the center of the zone, you're going to see a lot of these teams try to go early. You don't want to be the last one trying to rotate on out. As you can see on the other side, Bad Sniper, DKS, becoming a victim of Storm Surge. And you see that his shields are already cracked. So Bose and Journey here on the other side, they know they're weak. They know they're victims of Storm Surge, which is why you see them playing defensive, waiting for that perfect moment to strike.
Yeah, they are above on Surge, but they will need a bit more damage. It's not a comfortable spot to be in by any means. And so you'll see Boaz will continue to scout. Of course, Boaz made it to his first FNCS final last major and will be looking to do that again here, playing with a different teammate. But nonetheless, the goal stays the same. And for Vidil and Savage, they will look to capitalize on those teams who are struggling for Surge. And they'll do so pretty well here, just continue to apply pressure. Vidil just eagerly looking, knows that player is going to walk out at some point.
Didn't even get it. Okay,
Savage did.
Yeah, maybe Savage did. I thought it was a whole different one, great opportunity. But you can see how most of the team is already in zone, and this one's going to be a little different. A river running straight through the center with the 2 different elevations on each side. You can see how he's just peeking at that perfect moment as zone begins to overcome. That siphon was important, all that loot right before they make their next journey towards the center of this next zone. A good portion of the lobby, though, they did get a max full. How they handle this is going to be important. Depending on if you have ODM gear and a kinetic blade, it's going to change the way you begin to rotate as well.
Yeah, of course. Trulex and Chicho. It'll be very important to see how they handle this one. Of course, Trulex, that IGL, that leader, scouting, making sure he's aware of everything around him, and a bit of a surprise right in front of his box, and maybe a free opportunity. You can see he's going for it, tries to catch them out. Isn't quite able to catch them in time, though.
best opportunity as any, though. Just one wood ramp really separating them as Irazumi just has his work cut out for them. Queasy, Vino as well. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place, continuously trying to backtrack, put themselves in a better spot. Their own box at that, because that would have been dangerous if anybody tries to peek. A little bit of a lobby focus here, but nothing that they can't handle as they return, and Burn taking down Irazumi. Tened was already knocked, so they get all that loot in the world. And look at the difference in which it's going to make their game.
Yeah, that was somewhat of a saving grace as well for them. I wonder what Vino has in terms of heals, because Queasy is usually that player that plays the heal off for this duo. Unfortunately, he had to use a bunch of his heals. A nice limb there, though, along the way. Important that Vino has something for them, and if not, they'll have to find it if they do want to play for heal off. This is Savage and Vidil. Also still alive, also still looking good, and consistently making it to endgame, which is what they did last week, which led to their success.
This is going to be the tricky part, though, this portion of the end game where we begin to get those moving zones, and where you heal, where you use a lot of your resources is going to be very, very telling of where you end up at the end of the game. You can see Zara already popping one legendary slurp juice. All you need is at least one. Zangi has wing condition on his back, but high above the ground, high above the rest. Nathan and Jake, but everything comes chopping down. They're going to be forced to use a kinetic blade to keep their high ground intact. But Jake, he actually gets knocked altogether. But so much pressure on Nathan as a solo, and he's barely above the damage threshold.
He's got to give it up. Zangi and Zara will not allow him to stay, and he knows that he drops down. Zangi and Zara, they like to play high, and so that's what they'll do here in game one. They're looking to take it. Seti, still alive as a duo, and he's looking strong. The materials are starting to run low, and so we have to start to get creative soon. But if you're Mappy and I drop, or Mappy and Mappy, I have to say, things are also looking good. A nice refresh found there, and they got a lot of heals to work with.
Yeah, perfect for them. Just take note. Any other player would probably just get that elimination, get the scraps, leave it in that box. They bring it all the way to them, to where they have that safety, where they have that comfortable feeling of being able to finally get the elimination. But Blink, you might have missed it. Savage goes down. High ground putting the pressure there. We lose Veno along the way, but Queasy's up for the challenge. He's able to get at least another elimination, trying to claim that loot. But on the other side is a hungry player ready to take him down.
The big thing for Queasy here, though, is look at his materials, absolutely maxed. And he has so many chug splashes. Maybe not enough heals to win the game, but he has more than enough to stay in this one till the very end. Can continue to just top out the rest of his endgame with his mats if he really chooses to. Things are not all lost for this duo. For Vidil, though, doesn't have Savage anymore. In a very similar situation, but he's also looking good on his materials.
9 splashes is all he's really going to have left, but luckily for him, a lot of that damage was shield, but he's going to go ahead and expend it, save him, put him in the back pocket. He knows they're going to come in use later. As Curb, Default, they're trying to go unscathed, but towards a little bit towards their left, a little bit of high ground, they get tagged up. For them, they only have a few slices of pizza. They're only enough to get through lunch, but what about dinner?
Gotta be careful of these players on your layup. Mappy dropping down. Understand that they have to stay out of that congestion. They want to clear there. They want to be free of all the teams around them. And Queasy very much doing the same thing here. Making sure he's very aware and looking for opportunities, not shying away at all. Does want to find any other solos looking like him who he can capitalize on.
You can see instead of just straight kinetic blading, he's trying to keep his position relatively unknown. Zara and Zangi, they're still holding onto the high ground. It doesn't matter how many times things get chopped away from them. Vidil as well. We talked about him being a solo, losing Savage very, very early on in terms of these cascading placement points. So this game is huge in terms of the next 6 that they're going to play overall. Kylie gets lost backside of zone. Another player in Vico going to have to do it as a solo.
Vico, hoping Kylie was able to drop all those heals to him so he can continue to play this one out. Things are looking so good for Zangi and Zara, though, all the way up there. Nobody really posing a threat to them. They can just start to count their heals, figure out how long they can last in this game before one of them drops down to fight. Howley and now Tensi down below, running low on pizzas, but they're going to continue to top out. And there will be players here to capitalize on them right down beneath that layer, just having to break their way through builds that aren't theirs so they can form new land. Apex Mappy now, all the way in the back of the zone. He's going to have to start healing.
Yep, you see those splashes going off. He doesn't have time to pop the slurp juice. Almost threading the needle there, but pushes out the slap juice again. He's trying to battle against Vico, who takes him down. There's a huge amount of heals from Vico to claim as his own. It's going to close overall, and this is where the heal off is going to begin. Zangi drops down low. He's going to be the fragger, but doesn't even make it close to anybody.
Doesn't take anybody down along the way. And so the heal offs begin up above. Will Zara have enough? Didn't really take any storm ticks. Gonna be looking to try find anyone. If he gets that, he gets a refresh for it as well. Things are looking good for Zara. As long as he didn't take earlier damage, he won't have to worry about storm sickness. Vika will try his best, but his best won't be enough here unless he can find Chugs. No, he cannot. Voxy, gonna start to run low, but does still have quite a lot of heals, actually. Pizza does have the slurp popped as well, and the chug splashes, and I'm not sure what Zara has left. Does he have anything in the zone? If not, it might be a clean sweep for Voxy. As long as storm sickness doesn't play a factor, things are looking very good for him here in this game.
It's all up to this moment. A few seconds, that's all Zara has, but he's gonna get himself a couple of more, but storm sickness finally does him in. Vox takes the game with more than enough pizza to spare.
Unlucky for Zara, they couldn't quite pop that flopper in time. Even then, though, when you look at what Vox had, there was just way too much in the arsenal for him to out-heal. But he was prepared, he was ready. They were doing their thing down below, and they were able to survive to the very final moment.
I hope that he gave that pizza boy a huge V-Buck tip, because he didn't get just one pizza in terms of that heal off. He had 2 different game time augments popped. Him and his teammate played that one perfect. 2 slices left, 6 different splashes to watch it all down. That is a huge start here for them and their weekly final.
Yeah, and we really saw a contrast in the style played by Vox throughout that game, right? Because there at the end, has to be very passive, stay hidden, use the heals appropriately. But earlier on, we were seeing him frag out, we were seeing him take fights and hit crazy shots earlier as well. So a very, very balanced game for that team.
Yeah, we know where they're probably sitting maybe in a top 5 position on the leaderboard, but we got a very special birthday boy to break it all down for us and let us know what it looks like.
You just had to go there, didn't you? You just had to go there every time. Vox, Kaizen, they should probably hit up the Pizza Pit, look to be sponsored by the Pizza Pit, because they got pizza. You want it, they got it.
Yeah, we were watching the end game unfold, right? The heal up obviously starting to happen, and then there was 2 pieces on the ground. I mean, and you were like,
We literally looked at each other like, how? Two? I mean, it's a pizza party going on there. I feel like we should have a pizza party because, you know, if you didn't know, it's Zeke's birthday. But yes, Vox, of course, and Kaiser, what a performance in the end game. As Levin mentioned, they were just so adaptable to their situation. They needed refreshes, so they went out and got them. Yeah. Once they got them, they chilled. They relaxed a little bit. They thought, you know what? We've got enough heals to win this game. And oh boy, did they go about it in such great fashion.
You know, to be fair, though, finding the eliminations to actually find some of these heals, have the materials kind of build into the end game, obviously playing a very, very big factor here. But then shout out to them for not taking any storm damage basically throughout the game, right? Because we saw storm sickness affect so many players throughout that end game, did not affect Vox at all.
Not at all.
Storm sickness, man, in case you don't know, it's just managing how much of the storm you're taking before these final end game moments, and for them, it does work out. Let's take a look at the standings. How are things shaking out after game one? Now, as always, don't forget, this is just game one. Everything's fine. Everybody calm down. Kaizen, Vox, they're going to hold that #1 spot, that Victory Royale, and even honestly paired up with 6 eliminations. I feel like that's a little more than we're kind of used to seeing when we're looking at heal-offs.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, 6 eliminations is good, and I think that just comes down to the fact that they needed to get those refreshes. Another team that did do very, very well, particularly as a solo, was Queasy and Venno. Of course, Venno went down a little bit earlier on than he would have liked right there, and we often talk about Venno as the solo player, the fragger. The ability that he has is unmatched, but Queasy's turning up to the party as well, and he did such a great job here, Vivid.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to, you know, kind of play as a solo when it comes to these FNCS-style lobbies, but at one point we tuned into Queasy, and he had literally 500 wood, 500 brick, 500 metal, so he was definitely prepared, had all of the resources to go ahead and find that, and as you see it, that refresh right there is what allowed him to actually play so late into that end game. Of course, those chug splashes playing a vital role as well. He used them so effectively.
Yeah, they really did. And when you're as a solo, when you're in an end game, when you're in this situation, it's very easy just to back off, play safe, play passive. But Queasy knows. He has the experience. He knows exactly what to do, and that's be aggressive when it matters. When he needs to get those refreshes to get those 13 chug splashes, I believe he had at one point, he needs to go for those eliminations and pick up those refreshes. He did it at the perfect time, and he knew if I stack up these chug splashes enough, we can at least get a top 5 here, and it was good.
That's why you guys talk about it at the start of the show, right? Yeah. How you might have all the heals in the world, but how do you actually effectively utilize them? A duo in the 10th place, Vidil and Mr. Savage. I mean, a duo we had eyes on in week #1, looking to come back with just that much of a stronger performance.
I mean, that's the highlight, right? Remember, only 15 returning teams in this week 2 finals that were in week 1 finals, and Vidil and Mr. Savage are one of them, right? So they're already looking good when it comes to those series points, but even today, putting up a performance already top 10, I'm excited to see how this duo plays throughout FNCS as a total, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see them in grand finals already.
I hope so. I definitely think they have the potential for it. They have the experience certainly as well, and from one solo clutch to another, Vidil did such a great job here to keep in the game, keep themselves alive. And again, getting enough refreshes, not quite working out right there at the end. But Vidil is such a great player, such a great fragger. I feel like he's almost underrated in his actual fragging ability. Everyone knows him as a great brain. He knows how to play the game. He has that experience. But when it comes down to mechanics, he is really looking strong right now.
And a duo in second place, Zara, Zangi. These guys, after game number 1, are looking fantastic. I guess for me, the question would be, can we continue that momentum for 5 more games?
I mean, of course, you know, losing out to that heel-off ultimately, but getting second place, still very, very impressive. But the keynote for me here, high ground.
Yeah, they dominated it. They were all the way up there. They took it at a really nice time as well. And unfortunately, they didn't quite have the white heals to make it happen for the heal-off, but still a solid performance there at the end. Of course, Zangi having to drop down below and unfortunately didn't find anything, just went immediately straight down. But unfortunately for them, didn't quite work out as they would have expected. Zara, I believe they had a little bit of storm sickness here at the end, and it wasn't quite ideal for them, but just ran out of heals a little too late here. And of course, we saw the flopper coming through.
Almost.
Not quite enough time. There's that storm sickness that just came in at the worst moment.
And we did talk about this at the start of the show, the new zone circles 6 and 7. How do you guys feel like they maybe impacted this first game?
You know, top of the show, I was like, listen, you know, everybody's going to be congested on one of these edges, one of these sides, right? But right there, zone 6, I feel like everybody was able to, like, spread out and almost, like, no effect really happened to many of these teams, which is why I think we saw so many people alive in the endgame actually able to play that heal up, because zone 6 was honestly not that brutal in this lobby.
No, it really wasn't. I think a lot of the teams might have watched our top of the show, our beginning, actually, because they rotated in early. They were like, you know, I'm going to take tips from that Vivid guy because he knows what he's talking about.
That's not always true, but for, like, I'd say 99.9% of the time, that's pretty true. 9%. I said 99.9%. Yeah, come on, Vivid. I'll give you some credit. My gosh, 5 more games to go. Game 1 seemed pretty okay. People adjusted accordingly. Are you hoping to maybe see something done differently in these next games? It feels like right now it's a pretty good start.
Listen, there was 10 players going into that heal up, right? That's pretty much what we saw in week 1. We were expecting some of these changes to zone 6 and 7 to affect a lot of these teams. Seems like they have done a great job at adapting, so I guess just more great performances.
More great performances. I said it last week. Jalen, Victory Royale, game 2. It's going to happen. Second time lucky. Let's go.
Video fighter. Let's find out. Jalen, you've been called out. You have to do this. You have no option. It is Victory Royale or bust. You're right here, right now. Game number 2 is upon us here from the FNCS. So let's jump back into it.
With game number 2 upon us, we got our top dogs. We got our teams that are fighting for that top spot. But a huge change up. We saw them go down early. Thomas and Malibuca. They're going to be my team to watch here in game 2.
Yeah, look, Racetrack is such a hard spot to fight off sport. Very, very difficult. And so as we hop right onto the battle bus once more, will they be able to outdrop their adversaries? We see it. It's so all over the place. You have to be really, really on point. And even one of the best teams in all of the world, a team that came second last major, struggling off spawn there. Will that be the theme of today, though? I certainly would think not. You've got to think that Thomas and Malibuca will come in on point, ready. They might just made a whole new drop map in between that game just to be ready for this one. And you can see them both gliding in here. Ooh, look, it looks like Thomas and Malibuca are a bit more ahead, but Putrick a bit lower. Look, they've outdropped them by far this time round. Thomas and Malibuca, can they land on the right weapons, though? That is what happens of teams landing. But Thomas is there ready. A nice shot with that shotgun. And needs to do the rest of the damage.
You can see him just kind of barely farming up. Any mats are better than none. Toos with that elevation, putting some great shots onto Malibuca, but Thomas is there trying to go for a flank. That one's going to be successful. Toos is going to be our first player down here towards the racetrack. That siphon mats are allowing Thomas to kind of position up. And this is where he's just on the hunt for information. Figure out where Putrick actually went and try to get him out of this lobby altogether.
Yeah, last time round we saw Malibuca almost just sort of run in and look to close things out. Putrick doing the same, but working with a lot more HP than Malibuca was last game. And Malibuca not working with much at all either. Needs to go to the slurp track and break it, but if they do right now, it will work in Putrick's favor. So Thomas will just deal the damage that needs to be done. He's obviously the one that picked up that shotgun and only has the 1 pellet left. So doing the business there, Thomas.
I just saw it in the minimap. Bacon just landing some shots, and you can see where I'm just battling for the swords.
On earth?
Honestly, you know, that's a mini game within Fortnite right now. He just pushed him out altogether. That is what you call using the kinetic blades for outside of the box thinking.
That is Fortnite. This is why we play.
That happened to me yesterday.
You shouldn't admit to that happening to you, by the way. You shouldn't tell anybody.
I blame Caster Lash, man. He let me down. We landed there. He got the sword. I didn't. He left me. He left me out dry. It's all right. We got some VRs after that. So that could be a preface of something here. Go down to kinetic blade. You come back. You try again. Maybe you get a VR. Cashy's by himself. But he's fighting back in 1v1 versus Teeny, who's not afraid to go for the mantle and finish that one off. Well played shot with Havoc, and then quickly switch on over to Twin Mag to finish that one up. Not too many teams nearby, which means he's going to get his teammate back in no time.
I do want to unfortunately say that I did notice that Twy and Jalen's went down in the feed, so I'm sure Miniman is somewhere crying right now.
Yeah. Rox getting pushed back, getting pushed off by himself as well. You're going to see how he's really able to defend himself. A huge sneak attack. Gets the first knock on the flopper fan. Back to back at that. Now that is one hard-earned fight.
Ooh, what do we have there? Look. We're at Slappy Shores. It was a bit quieter last time we were here at Slappy Shores. This time round, Vika and Kylie, they're the ones being forced to the north side, while Proto Science Nazi on the south, a bit of a role reverse.
Interesting to see them just kind of poking for more shots. Anything when it comes to Storm Surge, very, very early on. First circle, kind of center for everybody else. Very slight southern pull to it. Got to imagine this one is going to continue to go south, and hopefully a lot of these teams done their homework, trying to plan ahead when it comes to where these zones are going to pull, but from one 1v2 to another. Definitely has his work cut out for him. He's hot on the run. He's trying to go for those launch pads to try to get out. He's going to go ahead and hit it, but the shields are just getting drained, and there goes Altinzi and Howley going to finish that one off. That's only one elimination, though, and not a ton of Storm Surge.
Yeah, they'll need to do a lot more than just that. They want to continue along with this game for Kaizen and Vox. Over here at the Brutal Bastion, of course, the winners of that first game. Doing it in impressive fashion with Vox. Really strutting their stuff around that lobby. Of course, winning the heal off towards the end. Now, switch and pace for them as they hop into a fight here at Bastion. They want to control this POI. They want to control the vaults that comes with it. And you've got to get rid of all your competition here to do that successfully.
They really just pushed this team that had already a tower built with no fear, almost as if there's no consequences, but it has to show the confidence kind of oozing over from game one here into game two. High card's going to spawn. Nobody has to go for it right out of the gate. You can't get distracted. Kaizen and Vox are doing a good job of forcing their players and opponents down to the low ground. It's just a swap in position. They just wanted the card first, saying, hey, if you guys want this, you're going to have to go through us. We're the new Vault boss.
Yeah, these guys are going to have just the best possible loot. Like, everything's going to be absolutely perfect for them. Their POI is also the gold POI this game, right? So they're going to have those sort of drones flying about that they can take shots at, pick up even more loot if they want to, if they're feeling greedy and whatnot.
Be the first team to immediately run over. And this is where their opponents, now the decision's theirs. Do you contest for it? Do you try to hold them in? Do you disengage, maybe return later on in the game and try to get the scraps that's left behind? Who knows, but only time will tell as Queasy, Veno. Kind of very, very usual business for them over towards Kinjitsu Crossing. Not too many teams contesting them, so they have to look outward for their search.
I think the scary thing about that team is that that's a game that you probably say isn't one of their best in the sense of, you know, one of them is down. It's relying on the other to solo clutch, and yet they still did so well, right? Sitting in the top 5 after that one. So this is a very, very consistent team that will find their way high up on the standings, regardless of the circumstances, it seems.
This is where you got to be careful, though. We've seen this one too many times. Link and PKR trying to learn from that last game. Same could be said for Shadow and Nyrox, who takes a big tag, but that's just going to be a trade, shield for shield. Just living with just a sliver of HP as Shadow and Nyrox doing a good job of firing off those shots simultaneously, trying to build a bigger punch and more damage to be dealt. They finally get into the box and take down one. Even PKR by himself, he was one of the original players that was weak and with very little chance. He's getting pushed further and further with his back up against the wall, and Shadow is just relentless, not letting him out of his sight. But there goes the first defensive shot and a massive one from PKR into survival.
And there's another team coming in. It's Rovis and Raxi.
Uh-oh.
They're looking to third party.
This is one of those situations, though, for PKR, surviving here, trying to last as long. And he's almost kind of hoping that they're coming into third party, distract that duo, that way he can have a safer rotation or an easier time to disengage on out.
Yeah, that third party though, just leave them be for the meantime. But Shadox and Nyrox did a good job. Can they continue that good work? What do we have here? Bad Sniper and DKS over at Shattered Slabs in the midst of a fight, and Bad Sniper doing the business. 2 limbs for his troubles, and now they will be able to loot up this vault.
That's a huge win for them. Getting all the scrap, getting all the loot. The gold is so important for them as well. It's going to allow them to re-roll and get their perfect chance, I should say, at augments. The choice is definitely going to be theirs, though. And this is where you can kind of see they also have that choice. Do you split the gold, or do you leave it onto one person?
Yeah, but the one thing that I think will definitely be something to keep an eye on, right? The longer they stay in that storm, the more ticks they take.
Oh, good point.
The less room they have to work with when it comes to a heal-off and storm sickness. So they'll need to get their loot and gold as quickly as possible and get out of there. Zone again pulling towards this sort of southern area. That will definitely benefit the likes of Queasy and Vino, who obviously learned that from Jitsu. For Mappy and Apex Mappy, they didn't have the worst of games last time around. It's good to see them back here. For Apex Mappy, he sort of had a rough period in time. Things didn't quite work out for him playing with Mr. Savage last season. And now playing with Mappy, who's an incredibly talented player. This duo, if they can get things working, get things clicking, they certainly could be a force within EU.
His first default and Kerbov. That's my cash. That's my loot. Even though it wasn't the legendary edition like we're seeing here, where Mr. Savage and Fadil can kind of bolster their loadout, it's definitely worth fighting for. You get the heals, which you've seen so many teams utilize to the very last moment. Mr. Savage just beam after beam, and he has the ability to trade those shots, because you can see him immediately turning around and using those shields that he just got.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you'll see teams do when they have those spare heals, right? They just want to be overzealous, right? Be over-ambitious in the way they peak, right? I think back in the day, you look at Fortnite historically, you see the very infamous T2 peaks, right? Where you sort of crouch, you know, you peek up, hit your shot, crouch down. But in that situation, Savage doesn't want to do anything like that, right? He's willing to take the damage if it means he can do damage and heal right back up.
Swizzy and Shimoki, though, kind of talking about them. They were first place on the day yesterday. Continuing that over towards today as well.
Winners from last week, right? Winners from last week.
That's what yesterday, last week. Time flies when you're having fun. We didn't even play yesterday. They did, of course. But you can see they're having a much different approach to this game. Before, it was all heal off. It was all outlast everybody else. Now that they realize with the zone changing, that loot, the resources, everything is worth fighting for, at least a little bit more. And there's still 2.5 teams here. I should say 1.5. Curb, Default, one of the first teams that even got pushed over here as Default escaped the fight early on. That might have been a blessing in disguise, because imagine Curb here by himself in this situation. Time will tell if that solo is going to be able to get out alive. I know I see him on the other side. Swizzy must have some sort of knowledge that he's there as they kind of shoot at the same time. Disintegrate the cover. Shot's gonna go through. As Swizzy peeking through 2 different teams. He has his eyes set on 2 different targets, able to really multitask to defend his position here, defend all this loot. But in about a minute, Zone's gonna begin to force these players in. And with Swizzy and Shimoki and the clear win condition that they used last week, they might try to disengage to not take any ticks from Storm, so that way they can use all that for the heal off in the end.
Yeah, and that was probably the most impressive thing about them, how they were just always a threat and always a force in those heal off situations. They won 3 of those games last time round. Cammy and Seido on our screens. Last time we saw Cammy was down and Seti was the only one up. This time around, both of them together. When it comes to some of the things going on around the map and some of the loots that we see teams picking up, we have Taco here to update us on what Queasy and Veno have been doing.
That's right, Levin. And with heel-off seemingly being the main point narrative so far here in week number 2, you've got Veno and Queasy doing the best job possible, building right on top of one of these caches, making sure that they can protect all of these resources, all of the loot as much as possible, because they know if they're trying to work their way into Mega City with it being such a hotspot POI, they've got to make sure that they're prepared.
Thank you, Taco. Kind of showing us the whole spectrum of what we're really seeing here when it comes to those caches is players are willing to fight for them, put it all on the line. Some, like Queasy and Veno, it's uncontested. Very similar story to their off-spawn bout over towards Kenjutsu Crossing. So it's really a nice treat to kind of see them, no matter if they're pulling zone, not pulling zone, they're still able to get the surge tags anywhere on the map as DKS just gets beamed out of the sky trying to connect Blade from point A to point B, and then you see his opponent, Zangi and Zara, quickly trying to move in and not let that damage go to waste. You can see his boxing up around and taking down options. Bad Sniper's luck comes to an end as Zangi ends up victorious, taking down at least one. DKS on the other side, though, versus 2. Back-to-back shots. He's doing a good job and able to take down Zara.
Zara putting an end to what would have been a crazy couple of seconds there for Zangi. A brilliant shot he hit.
Oh,
and unfortunately, Zangi goes down as well. DKS getting his revenge after Zara hit one of the nastiest shots we'll see today. It's DKS and Bad Sniper that come out on top.
Seen it in game number 1, and we've seen a very similar play here right before our very eyes. Just huge one pumps.
Yeah, and you could see he was actually trying to get out of the box, realized he couldn't, and so just turned around and said, yep, forget it, I'll just fight and I will win. Brilliantly done there from DKS, of course. You know, we know what he does with that controller in hand. Rarely misses those situations. Thomas and Malabuka, of course, we watched them win their off-spawn fight, and so they do have a chance to survive and live in this game, and better yet, the lobby has made a big mistake, Jacob. Do you want to know what that mistake is?
I think I see, but I know we're on the same page. Let these people at no home. What is that mistake?
The lobby has allowed Thomas HD to hold on to a pulse rifle, and there's a good chance, obviously, that Malabuka has one as well. Those two, with pulse rifles in hand, are cash money.
It's a get-in-the-box free card. Especially in hands like Thomas, that knows they can turn on that aggression in a drop of a dime, as Trulex and Chicho landing some great shots from the distance, but they both have their respective skyscrapers built towards Mega City. Oh, this is going to be a cheesy play right here. We got pizzas, and now we got the extra cheese.
Is Hen going to see it coming? That's the question. They are just going to camp on this cone, anticipating them to walk right through. But Hen and Paco, they're not quite moving yet. They are just taking shots from above, and so Thomas looking eagerly like, where are these guys? Like, why are they not coming yet? Like, what are these kids doing? Well, no, they're not going to move. They're not going to walk into their trap, and so they will just have to take shots from afar, but that favors them as well. These guys do big damage. Paco very much blocking the path, and there's another team in the zone that will give them that easy shot. And Malabuka just running right on in. Thomas saying, hold on, save some for me.
You can't do that. You can't just give him the pulse rifle to one of the most accurate players in Fortnite history, earning that title throughout any weapon he puts in his hand. And now you got the ODM causing destruction. Thomas there to clean it all up. 77. First shot, not the hardest, so he's going to have to deal even more damage. But there goes Malabuka to finish that one off. No chance as they continue to fight deep into the storm. They didn't even really need that elimination as they're already sitting over 800 above the damage threshold. It was just bonus. It was just that much extra.
Savage ends the deal. Look at that. Nicely done. They take out Hen. Paco got taken out as well. So brilliant find for these guys. Mr. Savage obviously played with Hen as well not too long ago. So A bit of revenge there for him, for old time's sake.
This zone, I feel bad for anybody that is not near this zone right now because you got a whole lake of water separating everybody with the farthest pool to any sense of that edge of zone. So if you don't have mobility, heck, if you don't even have those 3 charges to kinetic blade, it's not going to be as easy as it seems. So you got to have something up your sleeve and ready.
Yeah, the 5 teams you just saw on the screen there, those are the only 5 teams in the zone. Everybody else has to start moving there now. But you have to just get ahead, moving early. If you're one of the first teams to move across, your chances may be better. But the problem is, there's players sort of lurking on that, far side that's not on the river, taking shots at everybody trying to cross the river.
This rotation right here from Savage and Vidil is just all experience. As Steno's just stuck in zone, doesn't have HP, 2 different angles. It's only a matter of time, but back to this rotation from Savage. You even throw Queasy and Veno in this mix. This is where the zone was actually at, so they know nobody's here and so far. But as we got a full 3-team breakdown, Vico, Kylie, Queasy, Veno, Mr. Savage, and Vidil all rotating back on over to Kenjutsu Crossing.
Look, you cannot give arguably the best team in the whole of Europe a free zone like this.
Nope.
They're just here in Kenjutsu. They've not had to move all game long. Now, it will mean that they're probably going to be a bit low on search than they would have hoped, and from what we'll see from some of the other teams, but there will be solutions they can take to that. You saw them taking shots at some of the players below them. Queasy will go lurking, venturing in an attempt. But the zone now pulls up just outside of Kenjutsu, and so they will have to make a move there as well towards that 7th zone.
Yep. That's Savage and Vidil. They're going to be one of the first teams of the 3 towards Kenjutsu Crossing, making it to zone. Kylie, Vico, just trying to refarm as much wood as possible. They don't want to wait until they're congested with everybody else trying to refarm, as Bose is able to take down 1. That's Eclipse, who gets sent back to the lobby. Dirty Pingu and Bose just trying to get all of that loot. You see them tossing over med kits. You see them picking up extra splashes, extra minis. So they're just making sure that they have the right loadout ready for this endgame. He's even going ahead and sharing on over the splashes, making sure to leave nothing left behind for any of these teams looking for loot.
Everybody patiently waiting to make the right decision. If you're one of the players in the zone, you're patiently waiting for someone to maybe fly through the sky with their kinetic blade or ODM gear just so you can take some shots at them. That's what Snazy will be doing right here.
32 above the damage threshold, which is absolutely nothing at this stage in the game, which is why they're just trying to put down shots into the distance, disrupt any sense of comfort over on the other side. Eventually something's going to be able to sneak through. Isn't much, but for Snazy and Podesai in the position that they're in is better than nothing. Thomas and Malibuka just finds Kiro just on the outside of zone, trying to build himself an island, runs out of mats and opportunity as he goes down. That's their 5th elimination as a team, 5th overall for Thomas and Malibuka. And that's the interesting thing, 5 eliminations up to this point. You know, there's so many more opportunities that will naturally present itself.
Look at this zone, max distance pool. They have quite the journey to get there. And a lot of the other players in the lobby do as well. Look at all those teams above them. They are all gonna have to make that same rotation. And it is a long one. Mappy and Apex Mappy have quite the distance to go themselves and not much HP to sort of tank as they make their way through. That shield cake is going to do wonders for them in terms of getting them back up to the right amount of shields, but it doesn't look like they have any sort of white HP, so not going to be able to get themselves up in that regard. And that's definitely not good, especially with the nature of this season and teams trying to play for heal off. These guys need to find something, and very, very quickly. A fishing rod was in hand. They wanted to maybe try to fish their way back.
Yeah, you can kind of see them saving augments as well. I'm just hoping that, you know, for their own game, that they have some sort of game time or augment that's going to help them in this situation. As Perceive, crazy, trying to rotate 94 above. They know there's so many players jam-packed close together. Opportunity after opportunity is just around every corner. About peeking and poking at the right time. They got Vidil Savage right above. Malibuka and Thomas right below. But high in the sky, Queasy and Veno. And that's what I said last game with them in the lobby, Kylie and Vico. It's no free high ground for you.
Queasy and Veno sitting in their prime position. just looking for players that they can capitalize and take advantage of. The top two teams coming into this game fell early, and so there is opportunity to usurp that first place slot. And so with Queasy and Vino being where they are, they will certainly look to do that. Oh my goodness. This is why we say they should not be allowed to have pulse rifles. There's even more. I thought that was it. No, they take down Coop as well.
Are we watching?
And another one has dropped.
FNCX, are we watching the Thomas Malabuka highlight reel? Oh man, we got to see that one again as they just continuously terrorize the lobby. I feel like I blinked. Moments ago they had 5 elims, now they have 8. Thomas leading the charge, and it's a scary sight because Malabuka, he can come online at any moment.
This is the Thomas Coop mixtape right now. This guy is feeling it, and now they can start to make their way to zone, where they will sit and look for even more players to find, even more players to take down. Savage and Vidil still alive. We saw earlier in that first game when Savage went down and left Vidil in a solo clutch situation. This game, if they can stay together, stay deep in this one, there'll be another threat for Heal Off.
Threat indeed. Looming around every one of these corners for Sined and Irazumi. Gotta be careful. Storm Surge is not gonna be a worry for them, so you gotta have your eye on the prize. Not make any mistakes, play as close to perfect as possible. Thomas and Malabuka being proactive, destroying builds just outside of their cover. If the zone pulls that way, they're going to be ready. 1,000 above the damage threshold. Very little worries for them, unlike Vico and Kylie, who sits 16 below.
Okay. A little chop comes through, but they will be able to get back together. Just ramping up with the floor stair and wall, and somebody spotted it, decided to try and take a chop at it. Gonna have to reconnect. Thomas has fallen though. After all the hard work he was putting in earlier in this game, it's now Malabuka left as a solo.
Malabuka is someone I know I can trust. Kind of pick up some points, do as much damage as possible. Placement points beginning to set in. You see Mr. Savage and Vidil going for the cheeky play, trying to drop him down, but they're connected somewhere else that they don't see, but now they become the focus. Mr. Savage quickly thinking of a way out, and he takes towards the left side, hovering against the zone, making it that easy to traverse to point A to point B, but Irazumi, hot on his heels, doesn't want to let him escape, and while all that's going down, Malabuka finds a huge knock somewhere else.
Popping off in the backside of the zone is what he'll have to do. But he's going to actually look to Kinetic Blade up and over. He doesn't want to get buried beneath all those teams, but there are 2 players just on the other side of that wall that he has to worry about.
Queasy and Veno holding on, ultimate height. Mr. Savage and Vidil close by. You got to be careful because they don't have that sky base. They don't have that ramp, ultimate in the sky. So a threat for the Kinetic Blade to be looming around every corner as Irazumi and Sined get another one taking down Kyrie, going towards that ultimate low ground, which is a must because they now have very little builds, if any.
Sei and Camilo doing just as we've seen them do in many, many different seasons, many different chapters, tarping towards that front side of the zone, being safe, being secure. Savage needs to be careful, needs to catch his bearings just a bit because the materials are low and a refresh will have to be found imminently if he has any hope of staying alive in this game.
Malabuka's been doing this around the top 20. 10 duos went down, and he's struggling to pop that slurp juice, which kind of forces out the splashes just a little bit earlier than he'd hoped. Using almost all of them. Queasy Veno, though, sitting pretty towards the high ground. They're going to try to Kinetic Blade up, stagger themselves, put themselves in a better spot. While that's going down, Malabuka's using this as an opportunity to land some cheeky damage, but he now has to stay with the zone. He's out of heals, and elimination is a must. A siphon is needed.
And Vino and Queasy, they're being forced to take him with far more ticks than they would have wanted to. He's been such a nuisance to Height, and he takes down Vino along the way. Malabuka causing problems for the Height team. It's Mr. Savage that gets revenge for them, but the damage has already been done. Queasy had to go in for heal off rather early, and he's going to be up against Seti and Cammy, and Sined is still in this one as well. A repeat of what we've seen many a time before. I don't think Seti and Cammy have enough steam, have enough gas. The difference is, though, Queasy, this is where they land. They land that Kinjutsu. He knew the med miss was there. He can go right back to it and use it for heal off. But Cammy has his own med miss. He has enough time to stay in the game as well. Who will outlast who? Queasy's med miss is coming to an end. Is there any other loot that he can remember being here at Kinjutsu? It doesn't quite seem like it. So it looks like Cammy will walk away with it. A repeat of battles between those 2 teams, and another time where Cammy and Seti come out on top.
A huge feeling of deja vu, like you're speaking about. But unlike last game, Seti and Cammy, they secured that victory. They didn't fall as solos. They had a little bit more focus in this last game, and you could see throughout the course of all that madness, they didn't peek when they didn't have to. They didn't poke any bears. They just went through unnoticed.
Look, when you look at what the meta of this season is, in theory, you look at it and go, this is perfect for Seti and Cammy. It's all about having the discipline to be able to sit patiently, talk through all these zones before winning up the game with a heal-off. And that's exactly what they did. To think, Jacob, this is a team that didn't make it past round 1 last week. They couldn't even make it past round 1. I think me and you could get past round 1. But nevertheless, they're here in week number 2. And they're winning games. They're showing us why they're one of the best teams in all of EU when they're on it.
And just that last play, you saw it there in the quick highlight. Said he found a med mist on the ground. Instead of using it, he just brought it all over to Cammy, dropped it on the ground, and that was a little bit of a difference. Obviously, there was a full 6-pack of Chug Splashes and a pizza for him to use, but definitely teamwork making that dream work.
They had all the heals in the world, and it wins them the game, but it's not the only thing that happened. We have some wonderful analysts to break it all down, so we'll send it back to Zeke.
Thank you guys so much. Man, as the casters talked about, this looks a little bit of a repeat. Going down once again, Queasy, Veno up against Seti and Cammy. And you know, that's fine. Hey, look, it's just a week number 2. This isn't the globals yet. If this was globals, I feel like they'd be upset, but it's okay. Second place in this situation, under this context, it's fine.
Yeah, a lot to break down this game. And most importantly, we have to break down. Levin just said that he can make it past the round 1 of an FNCS, so
he's tall.
Not sure what's he's
tall does not help you in Fortnite. I think I am very much aware of that. I've seen his gameplay far too much. I think we're definitely aware of that. But Cammy and Seti, they are back, and I mean, this is good to see. I'm excited to see them performing in this meta in this season because, as Levin mentioned, we hadn't seen them. We didn't see them last week in the finals. Yeah. Now they're finally putting on a show for us, and I feel like this is the sort of situation, the sort of meta that will suit them. They're a very adaptive team. They know how to adapt to situations, but more importantly, they're very proactive early on in the game. They can set themselves up for success before the end game has even started. And as Jacob mentioned, they did a really good job of collecting all the heals here.
Yeah, 100%. We have to keep an eye on this duo today because it is actually very, very important for them to place high on that leaderboard. Levin mentioned it. You mentioned it. Not making it past round 1 last week puts them in a bit of a tricky situation when it comes to series points. Starting off game number 2 with a victory royale, that is one way to get up to the top of the leaderboard and get some series points.
And if I could just be nitpicking the duo just a tiny bit, I would just say 2 eliminations, maybe on the tad bit on the low side, but
that is kind of sexy. That
it is
defined.
Exactly. Why don't we take a look at our standings together? How are things shaking out? Remember, this is just game number 2. We have 4 more ahead of us. Queasy and Veno take over that number 1 spot with 116 points. I am not surprised, but as we start to kind of make our way down, Trulex coming right in there.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, another team that kind of came into this game actually as a duo, Queasy and Veno, right? Last game we had to see Queasy clutch up, and he did such a great job of that, but we finally got to see them as a duo, and it worked out so great.
Yeah, it really did. I think if they didn't have a good game here, it would have been a bit of a throw because the final zone was right in their backyard, and it's right where they know best. And ultimately, at the end, it actually did work in their favor. But this is a really good game from Queasy and Veno, and this is actually the first time we've seen these zones really have an impact. We saw a big rotation into that 7th zone for Apex, Mappy, and Mappy himself. Of course, that 8th zone rotation was so brutal for them, and Queasy just noticed that really well and was able to pick up a lot of surge. And you can see it working 1,000 above, and this play right here, Vivid, from Veno was really good.
You know what's actually funny about this endgame and how it kind of worked out for Queasy and Veno? Something that we see a lot this season is that these teams are allowed to just sit all the way on the higher ground and not really have to worry about building much because they only have to build 1 layer and everything like that. But Queasy and Veno got chopped out at least 2 times that end game, and that's why they were kind of forced into a situation to use some heals and some materials, which is why you can see they were very, very low on those that game.
That was one of my biggest complaints last week, right? Was why are we just allowing these duos to just freely have these sky bases, take them down, make them have to use their resources? And it works out kind of in a big way here in the game so far as we kind of look back on our standings. I mean, as we kind of start to go down, you can see Seti Cammy up in that 5th place. They've jumped up 13 spaces to now contest top 5.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I also want to point out kind of Mr. Savage and Vidal.
Yeah,
when we
of
kind of check
course.
this out, right? You talked about how tough that Zone 6 was. Well, Mr. Savage and Vidal, along with Queasy and Vino, were actually one of the only teams that was in that 6 zone when it actually showed. So, you know, that game was also very, very good for them, staying in top 4.
Yeah, Malibuka and Thomas as well, a fragging duo. We
Oh
saw
my
them
gosh.
with those pulse rifles. Unbelievable. I think Thomas HD had 8 eliminations
Yep,
at one
8.
point. I was losing count by the end of this game because, of course, we saw Thomas HD doing so well throughout the mid-game and the early stage of the end game to pick up as many of those eliminations as possible. And, of course, we saw Malibuka having to clutch up yet again at the end. He did a really good job at that, but all eyes have to be on Thomas.
There's actually a lot of trust in this duo. I saw actually a lot of times where Malibuka wasn't actually ADSing in with the pulse rifle, right? Which means that he was able to shoot a lot faster, apply a lot more pressure to some of these builds, and then Thomas was actually ADSing, waiting for an opening through a lot of these builds to actually get those shots to land. So that's why the eliminations are coming in. Malibuka was doing a lot. Thomas was just the one finishing those eliminations.
Yeah, and if there's anyone that you want by your side, finishing off the eliminations, getting those precise shots, I think I couldn't think of many other people than Thomas HD to do just that. That is where he is in his element, in his prime. And you mentioned it actually just before we came on here, Vivid. This ramp flip from Malibuka was absolutely perfect. Kept him alive for those few seconds longer.
There's a lot that actually goes into that, right? Because as you can see, he was facing one way. Obviously, when you pull those ramps out, they're facing upward, but he had to flip that around real quick, rotate it, and make sure he stayed connected. Shout out to Malibuka. There's little details matter when it comes to these FNCS lobbies.
It's absolutely so wild. And of course, we can't forget the duo sitting in second place right now. It is none other than Trulex and Chicky. I mean, again, there's just a lot of these duos that are starting to kind of piece together what the meta looks like, right? They are making those adaptations. Now, once again, my question will always fall back to, can they keep up momentum, though, right? You've had 2 good games, great, but you're not the only duo adapting. The rest of the lobby is also adapting.
Yeah, 100%. I think if we've seen anything so far from these first 2 games, there's 8+ players when that last zone actually closes. So you have to be ready for the heal-offs. Teams that have been consistent, got to stay consistent.
Plus, Trulex, in his case, of course, these guys have been playing together for a long time. They know each other very well. That plays a huge factor in those endgames.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we don't want to keep you here any longer. Game number 3 is here. It is ready to go. So let's keep the ball rolling. This is the FNCS.
Game number 3 is here, and currently in the competition, it's the usual suspects in first place. Queasy and Vino hold that spot, but can they continue to hold it throughout the day is the question, Jake.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at them, and we're going to be looking at a lot of different teams, including Seti and Cammy. A huge victory after that last game, but with missing round number 2 last week, not making it that far. This is a huge week for them. It may not necessarily be the week where they punch their ticket directly to our finals, but it's a week that's going to be so telling of how they get to play out week number 3.
They're not careful with how the rest of these games go. They may be forced to play in Surge Week, and of course there is plenty of spots to be up for grabbing that stage, but they don't want to be playing there. They want to be calling straight to grand finals, and a top performance here, and next week will be needed if that is even a possibility. But right, again, back to the racetrack, and we have Malibuka and Thomas up against Putrick and Toos. And that catches out Malibuka, starting this fight very low and might get caught out for it. He tried to run to the slurp truck, but it was not the right play. They were waiting for him. And so that leaves the mighty Thomas HD in a 1v2.
You can see Thomas. Yeah, as I say, Thomas is trying to break the slurp truck before Toos can go over and get any of the heals from it. Literally just seconds late. Now he's in a true 1v2. Back up against the wall. Very little loot to work with. A great shot from Putrick, picking up the combat that Malibuka left behind. Back-to-back shots at that. Thomas is finding it hard to fight back and hard overall. He goes down. That's Putrick and Toos yet again victorious towards the racetrack.
It feels like a game of ping pong. You win, I win, you win. And we'll follow that story again in game 4. But over here, we have Nyrox coming out on top with Shadox against Default and Curb. Shadox in the final moments. Oh, sorry, my bad. Not coming out on top in the final moments. It was Curb and Default that win that. Over at Bastion, though, the usual suspects here winning. Vox and Kaizen not quite having as good of a game as they did in game number 2 or in game number 1, but here they will win out and get the chance to play for that vault again.
Kind of surprised they even fought over towards Brutal Bash, and there's so much loot for 2 different teams. As Teeny just goes, oh my gosh! All he got was the ODM gear, and just like that, he just terrorized his opponent, sent him back down to the lobby. Man, I've seen some plays before with the ODM, but nothing like that. Queasy though. Veno, first place so far, 116 points. We honestly see Queasy a lot of the time. We join in on them. Uncontested Korkenjutsu. He's kind of looting up. He's making sure they get every scrap that they need. And you can kind of see what Veno's doing throughout it all. He's just kind of lurking around, getting information, figure out where these duos landed and where they're going to rotate to and from.
Yeah, Veno is the resident surge getter. Expect to see him playing aggressively onto teams on these extremities, trying to find opportunities to deal damage. And he's so good at that. Puts them in perfect positions to play the game the way they want to.
A little bit of elevation is all you need, even if it's hanging off the side of a mountain. Quickly building right back up, giving himself a little bit of a more sturdy foundation as he continues to put down shots. Multiple teams here in the lobby. Fakey and Fremont, do they know Fremont's here? This is going to be huge. I would expect Cairo to have some source of information peeking through the cone. Maybe he sees him there on the tail end. Oh, this is huge. They weaken the top of that cone, but Fremont gets attacked back. Very minimal damage from both of these teams. Uh-oh. Looking a little shaky there to try to get out of the box, and all it takes is one mistake, one misstep to do that much damage, forcing out some more heals. And you can see the patience on Kiro and Flodax. Not getting greedy, not putting all into one play, picking and choosing wisely where they're going to peak and land some incredible shots so far in this exchange. Got to give it to Fakey and Fremont, though. The damage they've taken up until this point. Not backing down, but maybe taking 1 or 2 too many shots. Flodax having the high ground as well. They're pushing him back. But all he really has is that Cobra DMR, to where you have to be as accurate as possible if you're going to land any of those shots. But if you do, it does pack a punch.
A switch of pace towards the Bastion once again, where we're going to try and acquire as much as possible. Just trying to farm up some metal before claiming the POI and getting all the loot that comes with that. So their banners now firmly in place here, like it's been many of these games prior, and now a chance for them to take down the NPCs and pick up the vault key.
Kaizen, just before they even attack, they just scout.
Yeah, Kaizen very aware that, right, the whole lobby knows that once that zone closes and the second zone, that they're going to have access to the vault, so making sure to scout around the POI, look for any teams maybe that were looking to get in on them and catch them out while they were taking it, but there was nobody there, so they'll just have a free vault.
You got to give it up, Cairo and Flodax, though. It looked like they're almost going to let their opponents disengage out of that, but sometimes when you see somebody running away, it almost like showing weakness, like they're scared to fight, and that's almost like a green light for some of these other teams to continue to advance and put down that pressure. But from one vault to the other, shattered slabs over on this side, a little bit more contested, a lot of teams towards the outskirts looking to either land some shots on them trying to escape the vault, or maybe go in for the scraps that are left behind.
And the good thing is, right, with the zone pool here, it gives a bit more time for these teams. We saw in previous games where when the zone didn't pull, everyone has to sort of rush their decisions. Nobody wants to sit in the zone for too long. Rather prioritize getting a good position in that zone for Hydro and for Strokey. Again, they're just going to be on this hill more or less every single time. This is the way that they get their surge. And opportunities are certainly there. They just have to hit the shots. There's also plenty of spare shields you get. There's so much loot in this area. I think this area of the map where they land is like one of the most highly dense sort of areas of loot. So there's a lot of spare shields that they can get. Oh dear, Zangi has not a clue in the world and gets punished completely for it. Down and out. Lucia and Steno were waiting in the wings, and that's going to leave Zangi and Zara in a tough position as a duo. Oh, now as a solo, right? In theory.
Yeah, but luckily they're kind of like on the outskirts, away from everybody else, but the zone is going to continue to pull in that direction. As we jump on board, Trulex and Chicho got a tower in the sky, a penthouse on top of Mega City. Looking at everybody, trying to figure out how many teams are leaving the zone, who's left behind. Looks like every one of those POIs is the vault. Usually it's one of the last teams standing that possesses the key and kind of waits the last possible moment so they can kind of go through uncontested to gather that loot.
Back-to-back weeks where Jalen and Twy have qualified. Obviously spoke to Twy at the start of the day. And he seemed in good spirits, but they've not had the best first 2 games. They're going to have to readjust, reform. And here you see the struggles that they're sort of having. Southfield, Frenzy Fields. Lots of players in this area. Lots of different teams. Yeah, with the icy slide. Moving his way down, but every single different way he looks and turns, there's somebody ready to take shots at him.
Yeah, always finding consistency in the first 2 rounds to get to this point. But as we kind of described, season after season, final after final, these stacked lobbies are some of the hardest to kind of battle through.
And this is not the team you want to run into.
Not at all.
Queasy and Vino, the first place team. Unfortunately for Queasy and Vino, this might be the one fight where they aren't the fan favorites. Because everyone wants to see Jalen and Twy do well.
This one included. But you can kind of see the patience on both of these teams. Cash is going to unlock. And that's why Jalen and Twee are just moving closer and closer. They're trying to inch themselves that much closer to loot, but Twee takes a huge shot from the defensive Queasy, not wanting to let him closer to his precious loot, and that's where you kind of see him try to maneuver around, try to take a different route altogether and how to attack the situation.
Yeah, and Twy is definitely the stronger fighter within this duo, so you definitely want to see him on higher HP than what he currently is. On the other side of things, right, you get Venno and Queasy prospering for the loot. They claim the cash rather easily. And so they will have plenty to work with. And I'm sure Jalen and Twy will want to get their hands on that, but probably not going to be feasible with the way Queasy and Venno are playing.
The only way they get the loot is if Queasy and Venno let them get the loot. They try to disengage, rotate out early, just kind of leave it as scraps left behind. Game time being popped early. SKV and Vacant. Sometimes you have to make it towards the end game. We got Cosmo and Jay just immediately all confidence, continue to move forward, and down goes game number 1 VR winners. Showing that consistency truly is key, and you gotta be able to battle through 6 grueling games in our week 2 final to make it there. A quick reminder of how close the leaderboard actually is. 2 points separating first and second place. 30 points from 4th to 10th. But top 10 is kind of where you want to end on the day to get the maximum amount of series points for that leaderboard.
Yeah, of course you will be rewarded the higher up you are. Shamoki and Swizzy, they know what it feels like to taste victory in this round. They need to get back to their form from last week if they have any chance of repeating that again. And that's always going to be possible, right? We saw how prominent they were in those heel-offs over here towards the Citadel. They played things out very, very well last week. Well, they are running into some problems here with Coop and Cade, making things not as simple for them as they try and make their way to zone. They are aware that there's that team beneath them that they have to be careful of, and that team's actually going to look to go up. They want to take the fight, Coop and Cade.
Take note of their timing. They did it at the same time to try to make it that much harder for the 2 different targets. And Coop is one of those players, we've ever seen him just make a highlight play on the day so far in a different 1v2, in a different game overall. Kind of allows Cade to feel that confidence. But you can see towards the opening, so many teams shooting some shots, trying to make it that much harder for either one of those teams to survive as Rift Island finally shows itself.
The last game, we saw Thomas and Malabuka get their hands on the prize possession from this spot. and it led to them causing so much chaos in this game. Nobody was really able to brace themselves for it. This time around, though, they're not alive, they're not well, and so they won't be the ones to take it. It doesn't actually look like there's anybody really looking for it.
Nope.
But surely not for long, right? I don't think we've ever seen a game in any of these lobbies where nobody takes Rift Island. It's just too valuable to not have.
I agree, because even if you're not actually getting the overclocked pulse rifles, there's so much loot still there. Even the vault at the bottom, the heals that come out of the capture point, a lot that is left behind. But we want to see where Cammy and Seti are coming from. They won that last game. How are they positioned to take this next, Taco?
Look, Jacob, the analysts were already talking about it. Cammy and Seti need to come up huge here in week number 2, so controlling Frenzy Fields seems to be their priority because they managed to take the POI with the capture point, but now for Cammy, he builds up, but he gets right back into all of the chaos. He actually attracts a lot of attention from a bunch of these other teams hanging out in Frenzy Fields, eats some shots, and resorts to just falling back over to Seti, but it's clear they're trying to be proactive. They're trying to create some placement points for the leaderboard.
Seeing a huge change up to their game. A team that's kind of known for passive gameplay throughout the first couple of zones, but they know how to drop it and switch it up at the drop of a dime. We're gonna be looking to see if they can solidify a top finish on the day, because they're one of the teams without making last week's weekly final. They're going to need a huge placement here in order to go into week 3 with some sense of stability when it comes to that leaderboard. Otherwise, they're going to need a top finish in week 3 if they don't get one here.
And even if they're not able to get one here, a top finish would only really get them a chance to play Sergi, right? This is a duo that wants to be qualifying straight for the grand final.
Especially since Sergi can be so volatile.
Yeah,
Some of these teams win a game, get on the leaderboard. Sometimes your focus is so split on both of those win conditions, you forget to focus on one to be exact. So it's not a position, even if you're an FNCS Invitational champion, you want to find yourself in.
There you go. Finally. Finally
Still
someone taking it.
uncontested in zone.
Yeah? It's free?
Not even the rifts at the bottom are being fought for.
I bet you wish you were in this lobby right now, right?
I feel like this is one maybe I can get top 25. I can get some placement points.
Wishful thinking from Jacob here. Well, Miniminer was roasting us saying we couldn't call for round 1. He's probably right, but you didn't have to say it.
I believe in myself. I believe in you.
I believe in us, and I believe in Mr. Savage and the deal. Fan favorites in this lobby. And it's also impressive, just again, the consistency that we saw from them last week. Continuing today. Cammy, though, putting in that work until he was taken down. And Seti also went down moments before him. And so the winners of that game, Tackle came in and updated us on what they were trying to do in terms of trying to find control over towards Frenzy. Unfortunately, they're just going to have to control themselves in the lobby and wait for the next game. This is not going to be the one for them. And that's not what they needed at all. You were talking about it, Jacob. They have to have an absolutely amazing day today if they have any hope for automatically qualifying for the grand finals.
They did so good, moving up 13 places after they got that VR. Where they fall after this one is going to be real telling for the second half of the day, how they have to play. So they might have forced their hand, but maybe not. As Perceive and Crazy just trying to put shots off into the distance. They know another team is nearby, but they're 800 above the damage threshold. Simply need to stay alive, and that's why you see the quick disengage, but almost in 2 different directions before everything gets recorrected. Right back on course, and what a beautiful play to kind of recorrect that one, because now they're that much closer to zone, if not already in it.
Yeah, and Perceive and Crazy, a very fun team to watch. We know how passionate they are, but unfortunately, when you're up against Bad Sniper and DKS, it's always going to be a hard fight, especially with how down below these guys are on Search. They're going to be desperate, they're going to be eager. It's up to Perceive and Crazy to keep their cool, keep their nerve, and not allow them to play at the pace of DKS and Bad Sniper. Let these guys walk into your hands, walk into your crosshairs, and take them out at their weakest moment.
Not let their shields get drained, though, even if Storm Surge is playing so much of a role here, because as soon as Perceive and Crazy hear that those shields get cracked, that's going to be a huge telling point of where they're at in this fight. And probably a huge turn of pace, going from defensive to offensive, especially knowing they're 800 above the damage threshold. DKS, a bad sniper, falling even further down below without putting out any damage. Everybody else, because they're stuck in this fight right now against Crazy and Perceive, are just bypassing them when it comes to zone, making it that much harder for their survival. And that's why you see Bad Sniper trying to take that additional angle, forcing Crazy down low. But for Crazy and Perceive, patience is key.
And they know that their opponents are desperate, so they can't allow it to play into their hands. Crazy with big damage there, and Perceive to waltz on through to finish off the job. Nicely done. And again, I told you they're passionate, and you can see Crazy getting hyped. That's what I love to watch in this competition. That's what they live for.
Shout out to everybody sharing their cams to be a part of this amazing broadcast. I love seeing what you're talking about. The passion just oozing from a lot of these players. It's just kind of contagious here. Throughout the game, we've seen Mr. Savage and Vidil go through so many different high and low moments. But they've been through everything in their journey to this year. Chapter 4, Season 2. They face contested fights. They face moments where their back's up against the wall, just like Queasy and Veno here. So many teams nearby, different elevations. They're able to take down Coop, back-to-back at that. A full wipe as they try to claim all that loot as their own. Just hoping for splashes, though. That's going to be the biggest key for a lot of these teams from fighting off heal-off is splashes, which it doesn't look like they found any.
In a situation here, Sined and Irazumi, where they're going to have to make a bit of a move on to get to zone, but you can see around them there's a bunch of different teams. So they'll have to plan this carefully. They've already had to pop their pizza in this game. And it looks like they both have spare slots where they're going to just sort of split the pizza, allow both players to have the heals to move forward in this game. This makes things even more challenging now. Down below on Surge, they have to deal damage. Tried to wait there to see if that team would move ahead of them, but the shot didn't quite line up. And now, just taking shots at the lobby who are all trying to hold them in. This is a very tough spot. If you're Irazumi, you're hoping nobody looks at you anymore. Has to stop and use some pizzas.
Immediately his teammate goes in and trying to hold the wall, play defensive. Sined just trying to get out, reposition. Irazumi's just hot on his heels. But they didn't necessarily get to pick and choose the perfect spot. It's only what you can get here in this situation, and they're smushed. It's such a bad spot, and that's why you see them trying to go up this mountain, put themselves in a little bit more of a cozy position. But the shots, no matter if they're up the mountain or below, continue to rain in. They become the focus. They spot some loot on the other side, but it can be a trap. Irazumi just takes a huge shot, and now they're suffering the consequence of Storm Surge as well. Sined is down, back up against the wall, can only take one more tick. Pizza's gonna be found, but can he just take a bite? No, he just doesn't get the chance.
Surrounded by the whole lobby, but no damage opportunities to be had. They fall at the hands of Storm Surge. And we may see another player victim of that as well. It's Vico alive. They land all the way at Slappy Shores, but throughout this game, they haven't quite been able to deal enough damage. And right here, it looks like Vico might just get dunked on by the rest of the lobby. Falls at the wayside, and his loot won't even be able to be picked up by anybody because everybody has to make a move on.
Looked like a child's movie with a monster underneath his bed, grabbing at his feet, sucked him underneath. As Veno's gonna go down, and the horrors continue. As Queasy is just trying to separate himself from everybody else, but he's the focus of the lobby. A lot of his hard mats being expended, being left with very little, but Queasy knows how to resource management. He knows the situation with all this pressure finally slowing down. It's giving Queasy a chance to breathe and rethink in this situation.
But another game, Jacob, where Queasy has to play out as a solo. Did incredibly well in game one in this circumstance, but will he do it again? There is a team close by he has to be worried about. But there's also loot that he has his eye on. Oh, he's found an extra slurp. Okay. That's nice. That might make the difference. And he's going to drop that big pot for the slurp as well. Wise decision. 3 mythic slurps for Queasy to use. Shamoki and Swizzy, the team that we saw win 3 games last time we were watching these qualifiers. And here in game 3, maybe a chance to win another. Queasy going down in the feed, unfortunately. And that's at the hands of his former teammate. Jacob Hen takes him out.
A little bit of bragging rights right there. A boast of confidence. And a huge amount of loot found, because you saw what Queasy had him just moments ago. And for Hen and Paco, that's a huge find, because now Paco's back on up. That extra slurp juice was instantly used. That's 7 eliminations, and you can see Swizzy and Shimoki with their tower in the sky. They're almost going to go through uncontested if nobody looks up.
But they've got to be careful, right? Floor, ramp, wall to build their way on up. When Queasy and Veno did this last game, they got chopped out, so have to be wary. But they will use this position way up in the sky to try and take everybody down.
Story though, I like this story here. 48th place in round 2, barely squeaking through to get another shot at the weekly finals. And before this game even came in, they were into the top 10, fighting for more, and another elimination is going to be found. You can see all the loot that lands in the box, a huge pile of gold, figuratively and literally speaking, as Vidil's going to collect it all. 9 splashes, definitely going to be the player of his duo to play that heal off.
Crazy and Perceive, we've seen them throughout this game, and they're not done yet. Perceive moving on through, trying to get to the right side of the zone, and base up, down, below. You can see they move on to low ground.
Trying to stay ahead of everybody else. They have the time to do it as the zone does begin to catch up. Flodax, I don't know where Hen was able to find that one, as he was a flying saucer going through the sky with Kinetic Blade. You got to take note for a lot of these players, once they Kinetic Blade forward and upward through the zone, they try to land on a high layer, but not high enough to challenge Swizzy and Shimoki, and that's why you see nobody really looking up. I'm getting that sense of deja vu because they dig into their bag of tricks for week 1, and it's looking like it's paying off.
But Vidil and Savage up alive together are such a threat in this game. You can see they're trying to drop down to low to find the limbs, and that's what they'll do. Picking up one there and looking for even more as they knock on this wood wall. Need to get out of the way though as they get stuck beneath some builds. And they're moving up and over ahead of everybody in the zone. Vidil catching up to Savage.
A lot of damage going to be taken by the storm though. Hen and Paco, ever since they got that elimination onto Queasy, it's been smooth sailing, but I might have cursed them. They both get beamed out of the sky. Paco just has a sliver of HP. Hen looking a little bit more safe, but both of them, that slurp juice is being popped out a ton earlier than they would have hoped. 11th zone, 1 more to go. Crazy's going up, down, left, right, and center before he finds his spot. He has a Mythic Havoc pump, so anybody dares enter his box, better watch out because he has 1-shot potential.
Crazy moving forward. Hen still alive and still hitting big shots. That's his 7th of the game, and a med miss found as well. It might not be enough to compete with the heal-off gods in this lobby, but it will be enough to keep him in this game as other players start to fall. Savage and Vidil, they've spotted someone in the zone they want to take out, but they may have to be careful with the players in the storm, in the zone, in the layers above them, pushing their way through. Vidil takes down Hen, and they're going to keep on looking for a limbs now.
That was a huge find at the perfect moment. Trying to get a little bit of a refresh, but Crazy has nothing. Shambles, no maps, but a chance to get the 1 pump, and he does! Crazy takes that one, trying to turn and burn, but his run comes to an end. But Skydoo's trying to take the high ground, and he goes down! 8 splashes and a pizza!
He needs Shaco to find his loot. We saw them win a game last week, but it won't quite happen here. Put to a stop, put to an end. Swizzy and Shimoki, not on height anymore, but still trying to find a win here. Vidil tried to connect, invade his way into the zone, and now not taking any ticks. He doesn't have the healer potential though. He needs a miracle shot, and now it's not gonna come for him. He will fall, and so not many players left alive. Blatcher does have pizzas, he does have a slurp, and he has a chance to win this heal off. It's Shimoki though in this game, and all these heals he saved up above here on height. Will there be enough to fend off Blatcher in this 1v1?
Looking like it is going to close out just like we do. The last bit of pizza is being scavenged up by Blatcher. Another slurp juice is going to be finished off. Shimoki doing the same thing, mirroring each other here, but with only 2 slices of pizza left. It could be Shimoki's for the taking.
Shimoki has the upper hand. Or will he have the Storm Sickness advantage? Blatcher's running out. He doesn't have anything left in the tank. And so Shimoki will do what they did last weekend where they won 3 games, starting here, picking up 1.
Yep, and it goes to show once again, any lobby late into this game that doesn't have Queasy, that doesn't have Benno, just leaves an opening for any one of these teams to steal it away. And in back-to-back games, the team that had the high ground in those late zones wins the game.
But look, this isn't just some scavenger team that picks up the scraps from Queasy and Vino. These guys are top dogs. You saw the way they set up for hype. They played it from early, and they held on to it so well throughout. Nobody could really do anything about it, and they win the game as a result of it. The formula that was picking them up games and wins last weekend is clearly still working here with the new zones. They are on one right now, one of the top teams in the region. Everybody should be worried about these guys.
Yeah, without even pausing in that final moment, you saw Swizzy land some huge shots with the red eye and go down to try to finish off any player trying to play that heal off. Not only do they have that perfect scenario, they're playing their roles absolutely pristine.
These guys have been on point. They are one of the best teams to watch if you want to learn anything about the game right now. They have everything down to a T, and the best people to break down all the things that are working for this duo are the analysts. So let's send it back to Zeke.
Thank you guys so much. Game number 3 here in EU was crazy. For a moment there, it was just all-out chaos.
I mean, yeah, that game went on for a while as well in the end game there. But shout out to the teams, right? Making sure they had all the heals necessary to kind of keep that one going. But the thing that I like the most, right, there's a lot of eliminations that were kind of going through in that end game.
Yeah, there was. It was really crazy, but ultimately it was the preparation that was done from Swizzy and Smokey early on. Look at this, 9th zone already cranking all the way up to high ground because look at their loot. They have those 2 slurpes, they have those chug splashes, they have everything that they need to close out the game. And look at this, beautiful beams from Swizzy doing what Swizzy does best. He's done it again. Incredible.
Wow, do not let this duo on the high ground. You know what, that was funny, right? Minnie was looking at these guys on the high ground. He was like, listen, guys, if I was in this lobby, I would definitely be chopping them right now, which is probably why you wouldn't place in this sort
that's
of
why I'm not playing.
You get a little distracted.
Yeah, that's why I'm not in it.
But this team, of course, being allowed to stay up here, I mean, you can see the shots coming through. You cannot let these players have this sort of free reign and kind of just expose yourself to their angles.
I mean, look at that from Swizzy as well. He actually dropped those chug splashes late on. That's why we saw Smokey going down. At one point, I was like, Smokey, mate, what are you doing? You're going down all the way, and he knew better than us. He knew that those 2 stacks of chug splashes were there, but he could, of course, keep those heals going, because when you're healing off, you don't know how much heals the other player has. So it's like, how much do I need to go here? Do I need to go all the way? Do I need to go all the way down? And ultimately, didn't matter, because they won anyway.
So wild. Once again, this is why these guys talked about understanding, right, how to utilize those resources, how to save exactly what you need. And for this duo, they find themselves a victory royale here in game number 3. Now, of course, I think we have to ask the question, what do the standings look like? Now, this is going to give us a pretty good picture of what we can expect going into the next little bit here. Vadil and Mr. Savage jumping up, saying, all right, friends, let's play.
Wow. I mean, you know, kind of finishing out there 3rd place that game as well. So shout out to that duo. But Trulex also staying up there 2nd place, holding on to that spot. Been there pretty much all day. Unfortunately for Queasy and Vino, dropping down a couple of places.
Yeah, a little bit of drop for those guys, but Qlash are crazy and perceive those guys moving up 5 spaces as well. I saw them celebrating an Elim earlier on in the game. They are passionate right now, and they're looking good. But of course, we can't forget to mention Vadil and Mr. Savage all the way up on top. We have to have a look at their highlights and some of their gameplay from this last game, because it was beautiful, and I'm really impressed with this duo's consistency. I wasn't sure whether they'd be able to do it, especially with their drop spot. How are they going to manage Surge? But at the moment, they're answering all of the questions that I had of them.
Vadil is somebody that you can kind of tune into, right? And he's looking one direction. He's kind of like assessing the situation in front of him. And then all of a sudden, he's like somewhere else completely, but he knows exactly what's going on over in that position as well. Like, he is so fluid with every single decision he makes. I mean, look at this, right? Finds an elimination, backside his zone. It's like, oh, I know exactly where Mr. Savage is already, and I haven't even looked at him yet. It's like, how?
I mean, they're just 2 fantastic solo players. They know how each other play because they are so experienced. And I think when you put 2 players that know the game so well, have experience that is just a wealth of experience that nobody else can really match in this lobby, you just have to experience that. You have to, establish their experience, because they know exactly what to do when they're together, even when they're not together. When they're separate, as you mentioned, Vivid, they're just on the same wavelength somehow. It's like they know where they are, but they don't. It's weird.
You used the word earlier, trust, right?
Yeah.
Knowing and trusting your duo. Say, look, you're going to operate best for us right now. Even if you're not with me, I trust you're going to do whatever you need to make sure we can climb up these standings. Let's take a look here. Trulex holding on to that 2nd place, and this is kind of what we kind of touched on, is actually managing to play well enough to hold that spot, because like you touched on, Queasy Vino, they ended up dropping because of that. But these guys, they're holding strong.
Yeah, they're pretty much just consistently finding the layer that they want, right?
Yeah.
Playing that mid-ground layer pretty consistently. And this is something that we actually don't see a lot of teams do this season, is actually look for refreshes while these moving zones are kind of going on, right? But no, he's looking towards the back, making sure there's nobody shambas that he can kind of pick off. And I really, really like that for this duo. And obviously, it's working great.
It's working great, and they're able to find those consistent placements. Even before this game, we asked a couple of questions of them. Can they keep it up? Are they able to make this happen in the end game? And we're talking about their experience as a duo, how well they know each other, and this is absolutely where it's shining yet again. Of course, you can have big pop-off games with maybe new teammates, a little bit less chemistry, but when you have that chemistry, it's so easy just to keep games after games going because the mental's good, the vibes are high, and you can see it right now, sat in second place. I'm sure they're not too much higher than they can be.
Yeah, and of course, just a reminder, Swizzy and Shamoki did to get themselves that victory out up 14 placements now in your top 4. Now, we wanted to just take a step back here. I don't know if you knew this, Coachella is actually going on. And you know what? None other than Jake Lucky has sent us a very special message. Check us out.
What's up, y'all? It's Jake Lucky here at Coachella. We've been checking out Coachella Island all weekend long, also doing some amazing interviews, but I'm going to show you some of the best parts of the island right now. Run to the top of Spectra and find the hidden rooms. Explore the art park, or if you're feeling adventurous, hit the time warp through all the previous years of Coachella. And as you're running through the island, listen to the tunes from Porter Robinson. Be sure to stop by the island after FNCS ends today. Best of luck to all the players competing, Mr. Savage, Clicks, and everyone else. Go get it.
Thank you so much, Jake. Great to hear from you. Coachella Island, you have to go and check it out. Of course, we turn attention back. 3 games left to go. And it seems like a lot of these duos are still trying to figure out the meta within the meta here in the competition. How will this all unfold? Who's going to make the adaptations they need to climb up these standings? Well, we don't want to keep you too much longer, because guess what? Game number 4 is here. It is ready for us, so buckle up. Here we go.
This is officially that halfway point with 3 games down and 3 more to go, Levin. It's going to be really telling depending on where you're at in the leaderboard.
Yeah, I feel like we have gotten a good feel for what we can expect out of this lobby when it comes to the dominance from different teams all across the board. But more importantly, what has been my favorite thing to watch, Jacob, the off-spawn battle between Thomas HD, Malabuka, Putrick, and Toos. Because the winner of that game seems to have, or winner of that fight, I should say, seems to have some sort of influence on the way the rest of the lobby plays out. So we'll see who it is today. In the last game, it was Putrick and Toos. The game before that, Thomas and Malabuka. And the game before that, again, game 1, was Putrick and Toos. So here in game 4, who will be victorious? It looks like Malabuka and Thomas have the better drops here. I couldn't even see Putrick and Toos. I'm sure they are here.
Oh,
yeah, and they definitely are. But Thomas is landing on a shotgun. Malabuka has to run out of the way. And Thomas is there, ready to help, but it doesn't matter because Toos from way downtown picks up both. Or picks up one, a bunch of damage onto the other, and Putrick can clean it up. Another win for these guys up against one of the best teams in the world.
This is how you make a name for yourself, Levin. This is how you get remembered for all of time. Even with a third party coming in, Putrick is not scared, doesn't back down, returning to that slurp truck. Just trying to get their shield and HP back up to a respectable spot, so that way if another third party does come in, they can at least fight back without going down. And that's why you see that third party. He realized how long it took. The revive came through, and that's why he's just going to disengage. Take what I can get in terms of damage and continue on my own.
That all happened so quickly. They didn't even know what was going on. Putrick doesn't even react. So,
Business as usual.
Just took down 2 of the best players in the world, but yeah, no problem. You know, this is what I do, you know.
That's almost a good mentality to have. I would love for him to celebrate in the moments, but he realized, like, hey, I may have taken out Thomas and Malabuka, but the job is not done yet. Can't celebrate until I end up victorious after one of these games. His hand is slowly but surely getting pushed back, trying to reunite with Paco. He's putting down good fire, good suppressive fire to help him out and make it that much easier, as the shield is going to get cracked, but he doesn't have much ammo to go back in and try to fight it.
Yeah, look, he did not have much ammo, but he at least made sure that his opponents held every single one of his bullets.
This is where decisions going to be made. Like, honestly, Almost looks like Hen and Paco want to continue to push up. They want to finish off on a lot of that damage, but they just don't have the resources to do so. So disengage might be here around the corner, but it's not something I think either one of these teams want to have happen. And for Peshka and Quasi, they at least get a kinetic blade. They get something for their efforts before they're forced to disengage.
Seren has found himself in a world of trouble, a world of hurt, using a launch pad over at Brutal Bastion just to get out of the way. He doesn't have a teammate with him, so I'm sure there will be some revenge on the cards.
Golden, much better spots than he is now. Under pressure, has a splash, has minis, and has a teammate and anchor to do just that. Help him out. Take down both of those duos. You can see in the distance, Lushi, slowly but surely trying to get cheeky, get his own surge tags before you figure out what his next strategy is. Irizumi and Sined, they're trying to finish down Jurdy, who's left by himself. And you can see by Irizumi, they already have those 2 eliminations. But my only question is, how much damage did they get? Was there any shields used? Because that could just be 200 damage for Storm Surge, which isn't nothing at this stage in the game.
Yeah, that's regardless of how much damage those guys have, they're still going to have loads more work to do at this stage in the game. It's very rare you'll sort all your Storm Surge out this early on. What do we have here? Raxi been taken out by Mappy.
Sliding around on the ice. See some shots coming in on the distance before trying to return fire. Using the shield bubble, which you don't see a ton of teams carry towards the mid, all the way to the end of the game. And Hollow Chest making its appearance. Bolstering a full loadout, a Havoc and a Red Eyes. Kaizen's going to go down. Cheapo and Purgeons having a much better go around this game because they were wiped off almost instantly off the map, out of Brutal Bastion towards that last one. And he's trying to get cheeky with the ODM gear, but unable to find the distance to break through, which means they're going to have to think outside of the box yet again.
Yeah, but this is very alarming if you're a fan of Vox and Kaizen. These guys won the first game. They were looking so good. Brutal Bastion looked like easy pickings for this team. And now a couple games in a row where they've just been bossed out of the lobby. And look, not completely bossed out yet because one of the players is still alive from the team. It's Vox, but things aren't looking too hot for these guys. And a large part of that is props. Oh, yeah, oh my goodness. Whenever the ODM comes out, you start to worry. Vox trying to line up something devious. Purgeons didn't see it coming, but the return shot was so devastating. Vox and Kaizen have to hit the drawing board, rethink this, and readjust.
It's going to be a must for them. And from game number 1, you've seen PKR and Link try to readjust, rethink strategies, but find themselves in another fight. Bacon on the other side, him and his duo trying to play defensively, continuously backing up into their own builds. That piece control is going to be important with the amount of real estate they possess. It makes Link and PKO overall kind of second guess. Is this worth their time? Is it not? And you can see just by them kinetic blading to a little bit more of a safe position, it is absolutely not worth their time.
Yeah, we've seen Link and PKO in very uncomfortable mid-game situations throughout today. It's been an area of the game that they've struggled with at times. And so they'll need to make sure that they have a plan in place to avoid and mitigate some of the problems they've been having. Fighting oftentimes and fights getting third-partied from distances. Snazy and Podesite, they're comfortable taking this fight. There isn't really anybody in this general area that's going to do much about it. So of course, there is the team at Bastion, but they're not really going to have their eyes on this or be able to hear this. Snazy and Podesite trying to use the ODM gear just to break their way through. We've seen some crazy plays, to say the least, with the gear. They're trying to replicate.
Fighting back against Snazy, though. Anytime he goes in, they've been adding at least 50 damage to the shield every time. Podesite is doing a good job of returning fire, making it worth the sacrifice. Once again, everything's going to be attacked, destructed there. Snazy doesn't take a shot this time. And in fact, it's Podesite again with the timing. Piece control going over. Snazy not giving up. He drops towards that ultimate low ground, gaining that additional angle. But with all this damage he's putting out, all their heals are being expended for them to try to stay alive and in the best position possible. fight will continue. Oh my god. He wasn't even in the fight originally. That's why you don't peek. That's why you don't peek right there. Stacey, awareness on 9,000. Seeing that third party begin to sneak up and just takes him out in the blink of an eye. Tenzi has no choice but just bunker down and wait for them to disengage. Vidil and Mr. Savage bumping up the leaderboards. They have to have such a good start to the game. Luckily for us, we got a new mid-game analyst to break it down. I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys Mini Miner to show us how Savage and Vidil's game has been going.
Thank you, Jacob. As you mentioned, our first place team right here. Let's have a look at how they managed that off-spawn loot path. Now, Vidil here, getting instantly that kinetic blade just to speed up the loot path as much as he can. Gets a little bit of shield off-spawn and then gets even more from these slurp barrels dotted around the map. Of course, this just speeds up his loot path as much as he can. You can see him using the kinetic blade at any given opportunity. And of course, this saves them extra time that they can use to getting better storm surge positions later on in the game to hopefully find more success.
Thank you, Mini Miner. Biggest breakdown that we've seen for our first place team so far. And you can kind of notice throughout all of that, one thing he didn't say was they were farming up. They were gathering resources because their loot and setting themselves up was so important. They know exactly when and where to get the materials once they found the loadout that they desire.
Yeah, Savage and Vidil currently sitting in first place is joy to many. I think this is the first season in so long where there is really hope for Mr. Savage. And I'm sure many people will be thinking, let's not get too excited. We need to see them do it in an FNCS final lobby. But when you look at the way they're playing, there's no doubt in my mind that that is certainly possible. You look at the tactics in place, very similar to what you see from the elite teams in EU as well this season. They've been working very hard with their coach Bloodex as well. And, you know, they gave big credit to him in the interview we did with them last weekend. So very excited about the prospect of this duo. Again, the caveat is as long as they stay uncontested, when the time comes to get the big results, I think the sky truly is the limit for this team.
Cairo and Flodax fighting over the weapon cache. This is that stage in the game where every single weapon cache kind of gets two teams have the ability to kind of fight for it. That's what we see going down here. And the zone right now, the way it's pulling, converging, center for now. This next zone pull is going to be indicative of where the next zone after that one is possibly going to pull in that same direction or the same vicinity. So you've got to be very, very aware in how to plan your game. 45 seconds, it will reveal itself.
Let's take a look at a replay from one of the teams we were watching fight earlier. It's Podasai and Snazy, who finally were able to close things out, it looks like. At least big damage being dealt here from Podasai. Taking that responsibility and delivering.
Little do they know, Apex, Mappy, and Mappy, just west, just north of where two teams are kind of bunkered down. Neither one of them wanting to give up the loot of the cache. So interesting to see who's going to have the last laugh at the end of the day.
It's very funny, right, seeing Apex, Mappy, and Mappy play together this season, because I remember a very long time ago. I'm talking back when Apex Mappy was playing with Jerky. There was a time when things weren't quite going too well. And I remember talking to him and saying, okay, if you don't play with Jerky, who are you going to play with? And even back then, chapters ago, he said, I'll probably start playing with Mappy or someone. And here they are, seasons later, playing together and doing relatively well here in this lobby. And I think what's been a hard season for both of them, especially Apex Mappy, who was feeling a bit demotivated, wasn't quite doing as well, wasn't quite getting the results he'd been getting in the past. It's good to see them here in this stage and finally doing a bit better. I had one of the keys to their success recently is Apex Mappy changed his sense.
Okay.
Yeah, he's changed up the sense. He would never change his sense ever, but he finally changed up the sense a bit and he's playing a bit different today.
Quicker or
I think he dropped. It was Vino that convinced him to drop his sense, I think.
I like that as well. A little bit more accurate, especially in those very destructive, chaotic fights. Accuracy means everything to be able to difference between a possible one pump and maybe even you getting one pump because your shot just didn't do that much damage. Uncontested to start towards Rift Island. Flodax and Kiro now have some competition. But it's going to be right below them to where they can take a Rift They can try to drop down at a moment's notice, and this will be the perfect time. No Havoc, no combat, no Maven, no real way to defend himself when push comes to shove. Crazy and Perceive, they were able to at least get one. Humble's going to go down. Ball is still on the other side of that wall, which goes to show why they're not giving up here.
I just want to see these guys win so we get to see Crazy and Perceive shouting. That's why I want to see them win. And if they keep hitting shots like that, they will very much win. Bala has to be careful. Oh, dearie me. The ODM gear coming in. They might just finish things out right here, right now. Breaking their way through that box. And I don't know how Bala survived as long as he has. Not as passionate of a scream by any means, but still satisfaction, a smile on the face.
Did that get stealen away? Did Shimoki out of nowhere take that from the hands of Perceive and Crazy? Didn't even see him on the map anywhere. And he's still finding a way to squeak in some shots. Having to do very little damage, but I gotta give them credit. Their timing with the ODM gear, even though they didn't land massive shots, as soon as they broke the covers, they were squeaking in, clawing at that HP. 30 damage here, 40 damage there, until eventually the elimination got stolen away altogether. But I think their timing and the way they're using these ODMs to attack their opponents, especially when they're as a solo, was perfect there.
Game number 4, and once again, Hydro sitting in this base, looking for Surge. It hasn't quite clicked for them landing here, unfortunately. There was another very, very good team we saw playing across the pond over on NA. In Acorn and Cole, they actually were able to win, landing in this POI, playing a very similar Surge strategy. And so that's not quite translating across here for Hydro and for Strokey. Hold on a minute. Big damage there. When your teammate drops, you have to stay alive. You have to stay in the fight, and that's exactly what Crazy will do. Really nice.
Quick thinking, quick moving, quick reaction. That was Quasi. No pun intended. Well, maybe just a little bit. I like to get the cheesy jokes every now and again. But just look how quick he is to react. Going through the covers, just taking down Nathan. Nathan was just kind of standing there, not really able to act quick enough to try to fight back. But if you guys are just tuning in, first off, where have you been? This is game number 4 of the FNCS Major 2 Week number 2 finals. Some of our superstars really rising to the occasion, but some of our week 1 competitors winning their 4th VR in just 2 weeks. That was Shmoky and Swizzy. Camion said he already have one on the day. We got a little bit too active in game number 3, trying to attack, trying to get into a couple players' boxes, get the elimination, but that was actually their overall demise, and that's why you kind of rethink their strategy, going back to what works, play patient, let those eliminations and those natural opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, you can see how high they're setting up here. There will be plenty of those sort of opportunities, but they also have to be careful because there are other players based up in positions to potentially take shots at them, and that's exactly what happened there to Fletcher. And so in this situation now, it's all going to be about making sure that they can actually take a fight, because with being so down below on Surge, you have to get in on somebody. And they chose this team across to them. It's Mappy. It's Apex Mappy. And Mappy's fallen now, only leaves Apex Mappy alive.
This was the bravest play I've ever seen 2 players make. From 2 towers in the sky, they kinetic blade over. They were down on Surge. And they really thought outside of the box in order to make this one happen. Now they're trying to chop him down. Not only take ball damage, but bring him right into the hands. Apex Mappy quick to react, building another skyscraper, allowing third parties to try to rein in and alleviate some of that pressure. 16 above the damage threshold. They find some sense of an oasis here, but it's just like a mirage in the middle of a desert. It's only make-believe, and that's why they're going again. They're in a finals lobby this stack. There is no sense where you can feel comfortable.
Yeah, these are the kind of plays you have to make when you are down on Surge and you have to deal with it. You can't afford to be safe. If you're safe, you just go down to Surge. Simple as that. There's no hope for you. And safe is not what they were in that moment whatsoever. And it pays off, but allows them to stay just above for a bit longer. But they will have to keep on dealing damage. Perceive and Crazy have to start making their way to zone, breaking up their rotation into 2 parts, stopping, basing up here for a sec as they take some shots into what looks like a grueling battle. Just across there. And then they'll start to make their move on again.
Notice that those teams, you can see the difference right now. They paused themselves. They paused their game just so they can get Storm Surge. Everybody else bypassing them, going ahead, going to the front side of zone as Teeny and Misha able to find another elimination to bring them above the damage threshold when it comes to Storm Surge. And if you look at their inventory, it does look like they have at least 2 slurp juices, leaving a few more on the ground. You got to imagine, or at least hope, Teeny has some chug splashes. That way they can play into that heal off towards the end of the game. As they find themselves just at the edge of zone, and as it pulls, they got themselves a far pull as well. But how do they get in that position? You see a huge shots being landed by Misha. Drayson's going to be the first one going down, and with a 2v1 situation, they're not letting that one go to waste. Immediately break into the box to find another one. You can see the damage threshold. That was so important, not only for the refresh, but to get above the threshold.
Like, so he can hear splashes being dropped just beneath him. But unfortunately, he doesn't have what it takes really to jump on in.
Ooh.
But he's going to find a different team to jump in on. But unfortunately, one shot from Queasy will be enough to banish him back to the lobby. Storm Surge getting the final bit of damage done to make the difference. But Queasy and Vino, it's a nice bit of loot there to add to their arsenal. And hopefully another game where they can show what they can do as a duo. Last game, Queasy had to play out solo, Vino going down. This time around, though, side by side, arm in arms. They're barely making their way into zone.
And that's all they need, a team like this. A sliver of zone, anything that they hang on, because they're some of the best fighters in the world. Anybody challenge them, that's almost a blessing in disguise. As we jump on board Cammy and Seti. Everybody else is jam-packed on that left side. Then you have our FNCS Invitational winners comfortable on the whole other side of zone, watching all the chaos play out. The Savage and Badil are the ones under pressure, taking shots from multiple angles. High ground is going to be taken away by Hydro and Fastroki. And that's where Savage is still collecting all the information. You don't have to be proactive around every corner. By 88 below the threshold, they know timing is looming before Storm Surge begins to do some damage, and that's why they're just so relentless trying to break through this box.
Max, Paul, nobody was in the zone to start off things, and now everybody has to get there. Savage trying to make a play, because even though they know they have a ways to go for zone, it won't matter if they don't have Surge dealt with. There are now 2 teams in the zone, but everybody else in the lobby right now, the other 25 teams have to start making their way on in. And that's no different for Mr. Savage and Badil. But they're trying to deal damage quickly before it has to be done. And Savage, unfortunately, just couldn't quite do enough to stay alive. Badil still on his lone stump. Still with hope in this game as well.
I feel like that was a calculated sacrifice from Mr. Savage. Instead of wasting the floppers, trying to stay alive by himself, passed it on over to Badil, knowing he was going to go down to Surge. He peeked through to try to get any shots. That was picture perfect.
A sacrifice for the greater good of the team. But will it pay off? Will Badil be able to make this game worth it for their duo? We've certainly seen him do it in the past as he starts to make his way into zone, taking some shots for some players, but ultimately staying alive and getting in healthy. Veno and Queasy, we know exactly what they want to do in this endgame. They want to start ramping up, playing for height. Veno certainly has a lot of mats out. Certainly think this is something that they can do and they can play for. Have to be careful though. Zara and Zangi on the other side. And so if this zone doesn't pull in the favor of Queasy and Veno, it may just be Zara and Zangi who play for height. Both teams posturing for it, praying, fingers crossed for that zone pull. And it will not favor Zara and Zangi. They will have to make their way onto the other side where Vino and Queasy get the favorable zone.
Yeah, for anybody going down before that point, those are huge points. But Badil just kind of puts it all onto that final moment, trying to kinetic blade across and find a much more comfortable spot, but he gets sniped out by Zangi and Zara. His chance and points come to an end.
Yeah, and these guys know they're just going to have to try to get to zone first before prioritizing height. Queasy and Veno had already started to ramp floor wall their way on up. We saw that be so effective for Swizzy and Shimoki in the last game. It's their turn now to do it again. Redeal, we wondered whether he'd make the game worth it. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that way. Queasy and Vino, though, again, they got chopped out this time, but gonna rebuild, get their way back on up, and try and build a structure secure enough. Spray all the players in this lobby who might be a threat to their height.
Kind of read that one coming as soon as they pulled the zone as Cammy and Seti. This is a situation that they know all too well as Vico and Kylie trying to be as healthy as possible. You can see Kylie, no shields on him. A lot of those heals going on over to Vico to try to play into that win condition. But he goes down altogether. Now Vico is a solo, which honestly, with all those heals, he might have had to play like a solo, so it doesn't really change his position in the game so far, other than he's getting pressured. And he has to find a new spot, find some sort of safety. Teeny trying to do the same thing, but with Storm Surge taking him in, his heals are going to go right out the window because 427, there's no way you can find that amount of damage this late in the game.
Yeah, he would have to do something we have quite literally never seen anybody do in this kind of competition. And he'd have to do it very, very fast. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. There's no point sitting in your box. You might as well at least try and deal the damage, but maybe just trying to out-heal, outlast players. He knows he's not going to do enough, so he wants to stay alive, gather as many placement points as possible, and use the rest of his builds. And so just going to full top his way on through.
3 ticks and he goes down. Make it 2. Chances running out, and so are his Vicos as he gets taken down. That was Swizzy! That was Shimoki! They got so many heals if they're able to pick him up off that elimination. Anchor Gold trying to do the same thing. They don't have the same splashes though.
Swizzy and Shimoki, they're not on hype just yet. We'll scout and look for it, but they certainly still are a major player in this game to win it all. The range from this team, if they would be able to do that, falling into someone's box, it's not his, but it's still alive! Why? How? Swizzy, you shouldn't be alive! You should have survived that spot! And his duo partner doesn't even do anything about it! It's for Strokey, he takes down! Hydra just has to watch from afar! And he's gonna try and get revenge, but Swizzy, so composed, so elegant, so on top of everybody in this lobby right now, and he'll just keep moving. He'll regroup with Shimoki, making it look easy.
Reunited at last, and a lot of those heals, you see him pass him over as well. They have the best chance to take this. Maybe Queasy, Vino towards the high ground, Cammy and Seti fighting through the madness to the low ground. They have the heals. If they can survive, Tyro's under pressure. He's going to be able to escape, but he gets tagged out by the zone at the tail end. That's going to be a knock and a huge refresh to keep Cammy alive.
Cammy and Seti claiming space on low ground, looking for a limbs as well. That is vintage from them. Swizzy, he's lost Shimoki, but we know what this man can do all alone. Zangi may be in for quite the ride. If he is not careful, the ODM gear will come out way into the end game to try pick that limb up, but it's not going to connect. Have to use the kinetic bait to get back in now.
For him, it's all about placement before he goes down altogether. Cammy, they have the leaders of the low ground, they have pizza, they have splashes, they have Menmis, a recipe for success as Cade finds one slipping, but third parties from so other angles, down goes Veno, and their run comes to an end. Cade's as well, he runs out of heals. This has come down to 2 teams, Cammy being one of them. Look at the heals, 2 different pizzas. This is a recipe for success as long as he doesn't go down to storm sickness.
And a repeat. Once again, Cammy versus Queasy in the final moments, both trying to out-heal each other. Who is going to have enough in the tank to survive? Both players having pizzas, but Cammy had 2. And so it very much looks prosperous, favorable. A med miss as well from Cammy. How's he managed to find so much? This is way too many heals. This is enough heals for half the teams in the lobby, but he has it all to himself. And so Queasy now on the search, on the hunt. A med kit found. I don't know if you have a med miss as well, but he's going to keep looking. We'll have enough time to use the med kit as well because of that slurp. And Storm Sickness is coming in for Cammy. He can't out-heal. It doesn't matter how many pizzas you have. Queasy will survive. Storm Sickness putting an end to the Polish player's run. And so Queasy will win the rematch in the 1v1 heal-off.
They are out for revenge in this week, especially going up against Seti and Cammy. I would call them rivals, but if I had to pick one, that would be the team. And that is a huge victory for Queasy as a solo again. And you can see how he ends up in that position. And as long as he's playing safe, healing out, you said Vino to do all the dirty work.
That was the problem. We saw what happened in that endgame. Cammy, earlier on, during the moving zones, he went into Storm, was looking for a refresh. Remember, he swung around with the ODM gear, he tried to pick somebody up, he had the shotgun, couldn't quite get him down. Those extra ticks of Storm damage that he took in that moment, that's what gets him. right? If it's not for Storm Sickness, he wins that game, but he took the extra ticks, and the game's over. Queasy can just hold on.
I think he had almost every heal of splashes, pizzas, med kits. They had everything in their arsenal except for Storm Sickness really playing a role. But where that leaderboard lands, because we saw first place go down before those placement points set in. Only Zeke and our analysts can break it all down.
Man, oh man, for the second time today, we see two of the arguably highest profile duos go head-to-head, all come down to a single moment in time. Before we get too into it, let me introduce your analyst. It's somebody's gun and the best taco. They'll be hanging out with us for the last few games here on the day. My gosh, I thought the one time was kind of that redemption moment, but to see it happen again and now go the other way, we have to go to a third, right? We have to.
It's the Queasy and Vino Classic. You know they're playing in a set lobby. They're going to win a game. It's inevitable. And, you know, it's fun to watch these two go head-to-head. It seems like almost all the time. Queasy and Vino just doing what they do best.
And it's clinical, right? Because how many times do we see Queasy just continuing to maintain that positioning on the high ground, continuing to likely be feeding information to Veno so he even knows exactly where he wants to push and be so aggressive in that mid to low ground territory. And it was honestly just really well practiced is what it looks like.
Yeah, Vino goes down, he disrupts everybody, makes it really difficult. And then let's also talk about this. That med kit play, to go find this and then have the knowledge knowing you pop that slurp and you can actually get that med kit off, that's why they're the best.
This is why we've been talking about this, right? Though we've seen the meta shift toward heal off, there is a level of execution. It's a lot of math, that's why I'm particularly horrible at it. Vivid, don't say anything. But I mean, there is like these levels, right? Especially when you're calculating that Storm Sickness, right? How much of the Storm have I invested in those early games, right? And for this duo, for Queasy to come in those moments and say, I got this in the bag, it's all good to go. You love to see it.
You do, and it's the math. You know, they're not taking that Storm damage, and when it comes down to it, it's who's not taking Storm earlier in the game, and we see they've been executing this flawlessly.
It's about what you would expect as well from a team that is regarded so highly. There's a certain standard that you've kind of come to expect whenever Queasy and Veno are on the big screen. The fact that it came down between them and Seti and Cammy, I do want to see the tiebreaker happen, but for right now, that first place in the leaderboard, it is all Queasy Veno.
And I'd like that we have like these parallels, right? It's like the two sides of the same coin, because not only do Queasy and Veno jump up 5, Seti and Cammy also jump up 5. They're both thinking the same thing. We want that #1 spot, but for right now, Queasy and Veno, they will finally take over. But Swizzy and Shamoki, I appreciate that Jacob had that huge call, right? They find that duo, they eliminate them. Now those heals, those are inherited by Swizzy and Shamoki.
Yeah, that was probably the last thing that Vico was hoping for, was to try and help out his competition as heavily as he did. And for a duo to be able to claim that loot at the best possible instance you could possibly imagine. I mean, Swizzy, Shamoki, they're looking for a repeat from week 1.
And they've proved it already last week that they are here to play. And people may have watched last week. They're just a team that can go up way high, play height, and then play heal off. Did anyone just see what Swizzy just did right there? That was disgusting. Taking over in that final few moments and then just showing we can play whatever we want.
Adaptability, right? How are these duos looking to adapt? And I think that is kind of what we've seen over the last few games. And you guys have been watching the first 3, and now we're here to kind of call the action for the next couple. What are you guys seeing? What is the thing that maybe a couple of duos might be doing right? Maybe they're doing wrong? What do you think?
I think that there's been a lot of adjustments in terms of how conservative teams actually are being with their choices of when to tarp out and when to actually prioritize using their resources, because we're seeing the heals still being limited in terms of teams obviously trying to hold on to them for those later moments. But I think the builds especially, I mean, one of the fun stats that we had throughout that game was that Queasy and Veno, they've been averaging the lowest amount of builds placed for placing in top 10.
And, you know, it's probably something to do with the high ground style, because they're not getting as many refreshes because they're way up there when they're playing. And we can see the builds placed. There's just so much that goes into this. Every single team up here is placing more or less builds, and it's interesting that it's pretty much in order of our top 5 going into that last game. And we see Swizzy and Shamoki, also another high ground team, a little lower on that builds place.
And again, I think that that's partially just due to the fact that teams that are able to vie for that better positioning earlier on, they're able to be a lot more conservative with those builds placed. But I like seeing Vidal and Savage because we've definitely noticed a certain level of adjustments to their gameplay this week. I think last week they've definitely ran into some issues where they just didn't have enough heals. But this week, I think we've been seeing a nice mix, but they have been having some issues with Storm Surge.
A lot of these duos are thinking the same thing. We want to make the grand finals. There's spots online for the global championship. What do we need to do? How do we take ourselves from here to here and make sure we have those spots on lock? The deal and Mr. Savage, I do think game to game, they're just thinking, hey, what was that thing we did? Let's not do that again. Let's try this. Boom. Suddenly they're placing well, right? And they need to place well if they want to make it to grand finals.
They do. They've been proving they're in the driver's seat for this meta, and they've been able to take over these last couple of weeks. I expect to see more of the same from them over the next few games.
Yeah, for sure. With 2 games left to go, who will continue to make those little tweaks to come out on top? Well, let's find out. This is the second to last game. One more after this, so buckle up. This is the FNCS.
I feel like I just started here. I feel like this is game 1, but time flies when you're having fun. And who would have asked for a better partner than Levin 2K himself?
Yeah, look, we just saw in that final game, or the game before this, or not the final one, how close, how finite the margins are.
Yeah.
Cammy only took a couple extra ticks in the zone, and it means he can't play the heal off and win because of Storm sickness. In this game, we will see the same thing happen where teams have to be so conscientious of how much damage they're taking to the Storm if you want to win a heal-off battle, especially against the likes of Queasy and Veno, who have been so impressive throughout today.
Yeah, once again, I mean, and usually we're simply talking about Veno slaying out, Fragger, elimination after elimination, probably the best player, best fighter in the world. Well, now the shoe's on the other foot. Queasy, best IG Yell that we've seen kind of perform at this huge of a level, but a battle that we know too much. Toos and Putrick, Thomas, Malabuka, different of a swing drop for Toos. He gets a little bit of height. Malabuka is being pushed back. Thomas just has a sliver of HP, and already a huge advantage being pushed over to one side. Oh, no.
This wraps. It is just wraps. Toos. Wait, wait, hold on. Let him cook. Hold on. Wait a minute. Something's not right. See, it's finally back to how it should be. Putrick and Toos win the fight. Malabuka making them work for it. But again, this just goes to show how volatile these 50-50 off-spawn drops can be. You could be one of the best teams in the game, but you will still lose if you get out-dropped, if you're against worthy adversaries in Putrick and Toos as well. They have been very impressive off-spawn today.
But from one impressive fight to the next, Paco's just taking so many shots from that third party. Peshka and Quasi just staying towards that ultimate low ground. Patience that we've seen one too many times in this exact fight between the two. Paco has that kinetic blade, so he's going to go ahead and lead the charge to safety. Hen slowly but surely following up. They got what damage that they feel is good enough to quickly disengage and are getting ready for the rest of this game. This is the 5th game, so depending on where you're at in the leaderboard after this game, dictates how you get to play in our final game of the day.
Oh dear. Oh man, Putrick and Toos, they won off spawn against Malabuka and Thomas, but they get third-partied and cleaned up, and you saw there, Putrick sinks in his chair. Disappointment, but there is still one game left after this one for them to try and push their way on up.
You can honestly see why he doesn't celebrate early. Anything can happen as we go through the course of these games, off spawn or not. Cheapo's gonna go down as we jump in. Vox and Kaizen. Better late than never. Starting off the day, game number 1, winning it all. Since then, having some speed bumps along the road. We're just kind of hoping those speed bumps are long gone and it's more of a highway that they can just race on.
Swizzy and Shamoki, such an impressive team. I think anybody that's a fan of competitive Fortnite just has to have their eyes on this duo. We've spoken about it so many times, but if you aren't familiar, this is a team that not too long ago was competing in the Asian region. They were not playing on the EU, but they came to EU last season and they completely rocked the world. Nobody would have expected a team to come to EU for the first season, make it to the FNCS finals, let alone place well. Now they're here in these weekly finals of the qualifiers, and they're just making it look so easy at times.
Especially in lobby to stack. Making it look easy is hard. Cosmo being able to save Jay. Saw him go down in the feed moments ago, but luckily for us, we're able to see how the action does pan out with third parties coming in. Are they going to give him enough time to try to get that revive on up? Flopper fan in the distance. And this is where he's actually making that conscientious decision. He doesn't have enough information on those players over on the other side. Instead of pushing what he thinks is two people, he's just going to go ahead and try to back down. BKR not wanting to let that one come through just over the mountaintop. Link has some separation between the two, and honestly, there's no other choice but to leave Jay out to dry.
BKR and Link finding their feet here in this game with an early LM. Hopefully that will help them make a late charge. Job's of course not finished. They will want to clean up on Cosmo as well, and the opportunity is certainly there. He's no longer choosing to run away. Actually choosing to hop in the toilet. But they know exactly where that leads to, so they will be continuing the hunt, continuing the chase.
Cosmo's just quick.
We gotta give Cosmo an award. I was gonna say give him an award for running away, but just at the final second before disappearing over the horizon, they connect with the last fatal shot.
Mr. Savage and Vidil, formerly in first place after 3 games, but once they hit that 4th, they finally hit the wall. Vidil going down just as placement points were setting in. I do believe it was around 25th place. So this is going to be a big moment for them in terms of their consistency, in terms of their position on the leaderboard. If they go down early, you can kiss first place goodbye. But now Trulix is gone. Chicho's just trying to hopefully go back for what I think might be his reboot card or anything here at this stage in the game. It looks like he might have grabbed something before going back on over towards Mega City. You can kind of see his game plan that he has playing out in his head. Go to Mega City, try to get the reboot, but there's so many teams stacked here waiting for the vault boss to kind of spawn and get all that loot. I don't think now is the best time.
Hopefully we can see those guys get back into the game together as a duo. One of our most tenured duos, right? They've been together for so long now. I remember at the beginning of their partnership together, things looked optimistic, they looked bright, they had some great performances in different seasons. And I remember the not so good times, the Trulex maybe was questioning whether they'd stick together, but they've made it through the hard times and they've had a very decent performance today, one that you can definitely be happy about and satisfied in. A duo that many people will be familiar with in the region, just a familiar face in any finals lobby.
Look at this. Cairo and Float X, they're just scavenging all the loot around. You can see them drop those extra splashes in the base. They know fighting for Surge is hard. At least with those extra heals, it's going to allow them to trade shots, stick their neck out that much longer, and deal damage as they take it. Hopefully that puts them well above the threshold. But from a team that looks pretty good in terms of setting up, getting that Storm Surge damage, all to Mixon and Blaucha, who we saw go down and suffer what happens if you're not proactive in the early game.
Perceive. And Crazy, one of my favorite teams to watch. Now, we get the Perceive cam this time. We've been getting the Crazy cam all day, but we get the Perceive cam. Oh my, Perceive, you're hitting some shots. I didn't know you were crazy like that, bro. Okay. Showing us what you can do. Look, he's smiling, he's happy, he knows. He just hit some crazy shots. I love having the cams, honestly, it's brilliant.
It's like going inside the mines at a moment's notice. When they frown, you know what they're frowning at, you're smiling. You almost know the comms in which he's talking about. But for Tini and Misha, they got themselves quite a loadout, a ton of loot. But I gotta go ahead and throw it over to Mini Miner to tell us how we even got to this point.
Thank you, Jacob. This is textbook good drop from Tierney. You can see him getting that SMG all the way up on the high ground, taking out the first player, and then not only that, is able to use that high ground to take out the second player as well. These guys are quite high up on the leaderboard, so if they want to keep that success going, they need to keep winning off spawn. Game 5 is no different.
Thank you once again, Mini Miner, big brain. I knew his loadout was good, but the Storm Surge and the eliminations we got made it that much better. In terms of his early game, setting yourself up right, be able to go straight from point A to point B, put yourself into the next spot to try to get Surge, and that's why you see Apex, Mappy, and Mappy in the similar spot. You don't get contested off drop, you're gonna have to look for it elsewhere, and a huge trade in shots, and they're finally able to use their numbers to take him down.
Let's take a look at how they got that first heal in. Mappy just knocking on the door. Edit, another edit. Oh my god, he's flexing on them. He didn't have to do all that. He went overboard with the edit. He did 6 top tiles. Really need to do the first one, but fair enough to Mappy. He got the elim, nevertheless.
Almost every game, Kylie and Vico, they always go after these caches, and even though we did see them go down before, they were stacked in terms of their heals, and this is exactly how they're gaining those resources. Very, very similar to Cammy and Seti on their drop, but you can see how they're scavenging for the loot. Anything that they can find, from slap juices to the fruits, the vegetables, slaying around the map. So that way they don't have to actually use the minis and the big pot they brought over from Frenzy. And Shmoky. I feel like this is their loadout. It's something you see on every game. They get their weapon caches, they get as many splashes, and they do such a good job overall of not taking storm damage throughout the course of the game, which goes to show why every single moment they have that potential to win off of heal off.
Yeah, speaking of heal-offs, we have Queasy and Veno who've been well involved in heal-offs today. Remember, this is the team that lands Kenjutsu, so they've rotated quite the ways to get here. But that is all part and parcel of how they like to play. If you've studied these guys before, in these kind of northern zones, they will run all the way up to dead side like this. Look at them. All the way in the top right here, just outside the Bastion. Those are the light blue arrows there. They are the team that lands Kenjutsu. They've gotten ahead of all those teams. Look at all those teams south, Jacob. They've ran past all those teams to get to this spot. That's no accident. That is very intentional. They want to stay in this area. Bully some of the teams, force them to take different channels for their surge. Misha and Teeny, of course, highlighted by Mini Miner for their brilliant off-spawn prowess in this game. And now just going to look to cap off their mats. Looking good for Teeny. Needs to maybe get his shields up a bit. Does have the big pots, and I'm sure there'll be something spare waiting around.
Zone did pull towards the north side of the map. You see the end of Brittle Bastion, just at the end of the mini-map.
So the thing is for them here, right, as they try and make their way on in, if Queasy and Vino spot them, they would ideally want them to sort of go towards the south and push them that direction. But using the ridge to rotate means Kylie and Vico will just be able to sneak their way on in. You're seeing here the battle for Rift Island. Didn't quite see it in the previous game, weirdly enough, but here, Shmoky and Swizzy, the second place team today, instantly using those kinetic blades to get up. But not without some competition. Say that and then the competition drops down.
I mean, I was wondering what Kyrie was doing up there by himself. He was trying to get that information. Oh, there's a team already boxed up here. They're already going for the capture. He's trying to scavenge what little brick is up there that he can grab because there's not too much that is safely farmable around his location now. So he's at least leaving with something from Rift Island. Might not have been the loot he wanted, but everybody knows how scarce those materials come in the end game, especially when it comes to brick, as Howley ends up in a fight. They quickly end one's run, but panics deep into the zone. Needs some sort of HP, but he has more than enough time to let that come through. Just one slice of pizza. crazy shots coming out from Video. Yet again, very, very proactive here in this game, along with Mr. Savage. And you can see that pink marker on your mini-map. That is going to be Mr. Savage. Built the skyscraper of his own. But he's just traveling, just trying to loot up any of the scraps. That's what these guys do best. They go ahead, build themselves towers in the sky, they shoot some shots, and while everybody doesn't really see them, they rotate out to try to replenish any of the loot that they used.
Hydra for Strokey, starting to find some rhythm in the past couple games. I did challenge them to it, right? I said I wanted to see these guys start to step up, and they definitely have. Do need to continue to rise, though. They have a lot of points to make up if they want to get into the top 10, but this would certainly be the game to do it.
I don't even know how we end up in this position, deep into the trench. Luckily, not too many third-party potential is going to come through this one, but Arizumi is going to go down. Sined's going to be left by himself. That's Fakey and Freemock on the other side. They're going to get all that loot, and Sined's just going to be stuck with the decision. Do I disengage? Do I try to fight? He does have the ODM gear to try to cause some chaos, but he just doesn't like the position that they're in at this stage of the game, and so he's just going to try to go elsewhere, maybe buy some time, force them to rotate on out before he goes back and tries to get that reboot. They got to be careful. I saw that team coming in from the outskirts. They're not going to waste any time. They don't know he's a solo. They're not going to even look that direction because they also got to rotate towards the zone. With the switch ups, this next one, where you position yourself, is going to be important. You don't want to be the team with no buildability on that far pole.
Yeah, your positioning in this 5th zone is so important, Jacob, right? Because of the new changes to the nature of the 6th and 7th zone, if you are, you know, a bit lackadaisical about your positioning in the 5th zone, you can get caught out, and caught out real bad. So the best of the best teams will be very, very thoughtful about where it is they position themselves. I think a lot of the best positioning you're going to find for 5th zone will probably be center 5th. Playing for center 5th, it gives you access to wherever the zone pulls. You'll have access to dead side as well, so you can hold some of those teams, and lots of different options that you get from playing center 5th right now. Of course, it's easy saying that you have to actually get there, which is the harder part at times.
Throughout all this, and then able to get an elimination, starting from 170 below the damage threshold, able to clean up, get some damage onto one, gets the elimination onto the next, puts him above that damage threshold. Perfect timing to third party that one and be the last man standing overall. Lachun Mixon, great adaptation from one game to the next, going down to Storm Surge in game 4, 625 above the threshold here in game 5.
Yeah, you're seeing they're playing very central, so it won't be too difficult of a rotation to make their way on in either. It'll be very easy to get there. Kami and Seti, they have ODM gear, and so they'll be able to rotate in with some relative ease when the time comes, as long as both of them have it, of course. Yeah, it looks like Seti does have it himself, right? So they can start to move their way on through. Gonna have to use some wood, actually, to make their way. There are teams looking at them. Didn't quite get the timing right for the movement. You always want to see that. You always see teams, right, looking out. Are there any teams watching us before we start to make our rotation? Can we distract them? Is often what happens. See it from Crazy. Again, some crazy aim from Crazy.
Wow.
I'm just taking a page out of your book, Jacob, okay?
You can take as many pages as you want, as long as I get a cast with you. You can have the whole book. I'll even read it to you, a bedtime story later on. Quasi and Pesha. You can see them even splitting the slurp juices, the last of their white heals at the very minimum. Doing good. Queasy has a little bit of the high ground deep into the zone. Veno's under siege, under pressure, but they reunite to make this a 2v1. And Mether, the entrance, they're going to find it. There goes the first knock. Siphon. 12 splashes, though. Take note of what Queasy has in his inventory, because he's been the one playing heal off more often than not.
This is not ideal, right? They don't want to have to stay in zone this long. And unfortunately, Rickball and Pradaj have made it so that they have to stay in for just that bit longer. I'm not even sure if Brickball's going to survive here. Yeah, it turned to a 5-tick. He's down and out. It's over. And I think they get the credit for that one as well, so I'm sure they'll take that.
Probably laughing as it popped up on screen. Oh, I'll take it. Two points. Elam, one less player to go through. But only elimination points so far into our top 29. Placement points don't begin to set in until we get into our top 25 teams. And even then, that's just the tip of the iceberg. As we go into our half-half zone 7. Only about 5 teams currently in. Everybody else, over 23 teams, need to find their own journey, their own path to safety. Some are going to find it quicker than others. Steve popping the last of his slurp juices. Well fought for to get into this position. They haven't even scored any points up into this stage of the game. 0 eliminations, top 28. Staying alive is a must. Especially for any of these teams into the top 10 that might be in a similar situation. Wow. That's how you back them down. Cade gets taken out. 2 great shots from both Crazy and Perceive. They get all that loot. You see them kind of travel a little bit down the mountain to grab that one. I would love to see them kind of go back up to where they were at position before, at least some sort of resemblance of that high ground.
Oh no. You hate to see it. I think we've all done it playing this season, where you just make this minor mistake there with your kinetic blade, and that's going to cost him so many heals. Look at how many heals he's going to have to use to stay alive, Shimoki. And even then, he's still at risk of being taken out as he glides his way on in. Fortunately, nobody looking, and Swizzy will open a gap to be able to allow him to get in, but that is very unfortunate, Jacob.
Yeah. The heals that you're talking about, with the damage to the zone, it's going to be real telling of anybody trying to play heal off. Ends up in a weird spot against Apex, Mappy, and Mappy fighting over loot. I see a med miss. That's at least worth it for Smokey and Swizzy, who more often than not find themselves in a heal-off situation. But from one team to the next, that's Link and PKR on the other side of that box. Just goes to show how jam-packed everybody is into this one spot.
Yeah, look, these guys may not have as many spare heals as they once had. Any refreshes they get will do wonders for them in terms of picking those up. But even with the way the zone is moving right now, if this game finishes close towards that brutal bastion area, if they do get to a heal off, there is always the potential to run in there and look at the captured flag and see if there's any loot. Of course, you've got to get there, and if you're Shimoki, that doesn't seem like it's going to be an option for you. Swizzy left alone as a solo.
That's huge. Shimoki was the one playing heal off, sending Swizzy down to get the eliminations and prevent anybody else from doing the same, and they're gone altogether. That's Kaizen who gets one right before taking down Jalen moments ago. Huge amount of proactivity there in those first couple of seconds as Venno and Queasy, you can see them aiming into the distance, shooting down that skyscraper in the sky, trying to make it that much harder for anybody up there to try to survive. That way they have the best chances of any of them trying to steal it away, but a far pull for them. With just a couple of builds holding them together, they feel like this is a must.
Yeah, but look, Queasy's chopping it out. He spots the weakness in it, isn't quite able to get it, but it's literally just holding on by a couple builds. Queasy's going to persist. Will he be able to crack it, though? He will. They fall. They come tumbling down. And Misha, but did he just go down completely there? It didn't really look like he held on. His HP was so low by the time he got down to the ground. Really tough scenes for Misha and Sini.
If he survives, that is definitely going to be a miracle run, but
He went down.
the new players of the high ground, you see what they did to earn it, terrorizing everybody else. That's Queasy and Venno going to make claim for themselves. Sinet only 45 above the damage threshold, no HP, goes inside of the zone, only can take a few ticks. Doesn't have a chance to pop his minis either. He doesn't really have build to defend himself. Goes up, over, perfect time to hit that hop, get out alive, keep his game running.
Just has to stay alive. One build remaining. Use that to block yourself off when needed, or maybe build a stair if you have to get up somewhere. But no sudden movement's going to be made here from Sined. Like I a snake waiting in the grass to strike somebody who isn't aware, who isn't alert, and that might just be Jurdy here. Wasn't able to connect to the fatal blow though. Just gonna sting him a little bit. And so again, just having to go back to retreating, hiding, lurking here in these old builds.
Just trying to recycle as much as he can, find some sort of a path to victory. But we lose Queasy along the way. The one who's been playing heal off. Is the revive going to be worth it here?
I think they both value them being up, even if they are taking some ticks. Gonna have to chug splash instantly if they are to stay alive. I believe that is what exactly has happened, using up all those chug splashes. Now the incentive for Queasy and Vino will just be to frag out, get as many as eliminations as possible, and maybe still try for a heal up. If they didn't take any ticks throughout the game, there may still be hope. For Sinner though, his hope remains in hiding in this cone and hoping somebody walks right over his box. And that might just happen, but it's a duo. It's perceiving Crazy. They're waiting, and they will not be caught out.
He's just trying to get any extra placement that he can claw at. Series points are so important, especially the 5th game going into our 6th, which is our last game of the day. The revive has been achieved. Queasy is back into this, but Drayson and Darky got the high ground. They're holding on to it. They have slurp juices, they have chug splashes, and a recipe for success as Vidil and Savage take down Link. A huge siphon, but they didn't find a huge amount of heals, but I was wrong. They find a full pizza, they find slurp juices, and a couple extra slices left over for lunch.
Vidil's just gonna drop his AR, and that's the right decision, totally. Needs to hold on to as many heals as possible. They really have a chance to play for heal off now, but they need to stay alive, and in the back of the zone, they need to be careful. There's so many different players here fighting, tumbling, fumbling, falling. Seti and Cammy is still alive in this one, and they have got plenty of heals for themselves, but they get taken down. It's Seti who falls, Cammy comes up clutch, and he's gonna go for the revive. No, it's not worth it. You just have to play for yourself, play for your life. Seti will drop you the heals. Vino and Queasy are going to still keep fragging out. They're not playing on height. They might not have the heal of potential, but like I said, the incentive is to drop down and frag out, and that's what they'll do here.
This is going to be a big moment as everybody took some damage very, very early on. Veno, Vedil, they took damage. You got to think the high ground probably sitting pretty, able to escape a lot of that storm. It's perceiving Crazy, causing some chaos down low. But Cammy is still slivering his way in throughout and past all these duos to try to claim a top 5 position here in our 5th game of the day. As everybody's just squeaking, scrambling through. A huge shot onto Veno. He's trying to survive, and he goes down.
Queasy and Vino fought, but it's fine. They weren't huge players in the heal-off anyway. Took way too much storm damage earlier. It just remains the rest of the lobby who has a chance to do it. Perceive will fall. Darky does have a chance up above using pizzas, using the slurps. Camilo all alone. We saw him try to pick up Seti. It wasn't worth it. There was a couple ticks that he took there, but another opportunity for Cammy to try and win a heal-off out. Vidil's still in this one again. We saw him find that pizza. Will it be the defining factor? Cammy trying his best. His best won't be enough. 3rd place still an accomplishment. Darky versus Vidil in a 1v1.
Pizza and Splashes versus Pizza and Splashes is coming down to who took the least amount of damage. The Storm Sickness. Vidil, he's run out. He only has 6 pieces of pizza left versus 5 and a splash on the other side. Storm Sickness around this corner. This is going to come down to the wire. He's getting chunked out. Vidil, Storm Sickness is sitting in, and he can't outlast. Darky takes the game for him and Dre.
Too many ticks to the Storm earlier on, and it will cost you. You cannot heal off against Darky in that situation. Darky, they held on to height, and they win the game as a result of it.
But the common trend, the similarity once we go into our 6th and final game, Queasy, Vino, Vidil, Cammy, Seti, outlasting everybody else once again in our 5th game. It's going to be real telling, but Drayson and Darky, they are a new challenger to that leaderboard.
Look, it's the usual suspects making these games interesting for us here. Consistently making it to end games, right? I think we've seen people talk about, hey, is this a meta that you can be consistent in? These teams are just making it look so easy here, and they're racking up the points. We're going to send it back to the analysts to break that one down.
Thank you guys so much. Game number 5 is done, which means we have 1 left on the day. But once again, Storm Sickness. I love that the cast took an opportunity there to talk about that. You have to manage those ticks. If you're not careful, it will come back to bite you.
Yeah, we saw right there, Queasy and Vino took that fight, and the guys over there, they were talking about it. You can't do that when you're trying to play for the win, and they knew that. So they adjusted on the fly, they played the game differently, and they went for a more aggressive low ground play style.
Yeah, for a moment, though, it did almost appear as though we were going to get that tiebreaker instance we've been asking for between Cammy, Seti, Queasy, Veno, but then Savage had to play a little bit of the interruption ordeal, but at the same time, I think ultimately it just came down to management as far as resources were concerned.
Yeah, that's the kind of the conversation we've continued to build up, right, is going into this late game, you have to have not only heals, but having those builds, you know, having those tools in your inventory to make sure you just set yourself up for success. For Darky here, again, managing the storm sickness and just saying, hey, I got a pizza back there. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to go stop rules. We'll get pit stop, you know, a little pit stop.